Hey, what's up? I wanted to watch a video of two titans communicating with one another, intellectual titans of our age, and I wanted to learn about this. This is from 5 months ago, but I'm just catching up with they're doing so many things. I wanted to watch this and just kind of pick up some of the wisdom that they drop, and then maybe play chess at the same time. So let's see how this goes.
You've been standing up to the woke mob more and more.
Of course.
And so what's been the consequence? Not many people are doing that.
No, you're right.
So that already gives a great vibe, you know. So it's like very good, friendly vibe where they're going to be getting along, and I can't wait to see them bonding. I'm just hoping for some good bonding because you don't always get that in intellectual discourse. That's one of the main drawbacks, I would say.
Oh, yeah, it's going to come back and get you. No, I'm
Karma.
sorry.
Weaponized karma.
Weaponized karma. No, life is random. Okay, is he wearing
That's kind of good. Is that branding? He goes, life is random, Club Random. So is that his philosophy, life is random? I don't watch Club Random. I haven't seen much of it at all. But obviously I want to see these two, titans.
Suit? No,
Play some
instead.
chess.
just a two-piece suit.
How are you doing?
So he has the guest already there, and then he shows up?
Doing.
Good to see you. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, it looks so good. I can't tell you how much to me, as we get older, of course, more, that is the lead story, is that someone who I didn't know if we were going to have, you look so hale. You look like it might have been good for you. I knew someone once who, their house was burned.
Does Jordan Peterson not know what hail means, maybe? He's like, am I being insulted?
Burning, and she ran in to get her kids. And whatever the fire did, it's like her skin was perfect. I always kid her about it.
Yeah, seems like a rough way to get good skin tone. Yeah, well, sometimes you can emerge,
Trying to get the...
if not improved, at least somewhat unscathed.
I'm on Substack now.
Yeah,
They gave up?
I heard.
Go to
Tell me
Bill
about that.
Thank you, Ed. Go to billmaher.substack.com. Quentin Part 2 is our first exclusive episode. Oh, yeah, this is extras, and you'll get much more. And the Peterson Academy. If you want an actual education, join up. And if you just want an education like I do, because I want to hear somebody who's brilliant, I don't have to tell you where you can get Jordan Peterson. And you feel good?
Not bad.
You feel like you're...
Peterson Academy is very interesting to me. The way Peterson started this business where people sign up and take classes, and but the classes are video lectures that they watch. Sort of maybe a little bit more structured than YouTube videos, but and then there's like community I don't know if it's Discord, but some community that they go. But you don't have to take tests. I don't believe there are exams, as far as I'm aware. Maybe there are, but they're definitely not mandatory if they have exams. So, and it's not accredited. Obviously, it goes without saying. But that's fine. It's cool. I'd make stupid, not accredited content all the time, and that's great. And it's good to try to teach people stuff, and a lot of people enjoy this guy, obviously. But it is interesting to me because it's called Peterson Academy, but it's not a accredited college. And I think at first he said they were going to try to be accredited fairly quickly, and then said not as quickly, but could be wrong about that. But yeah.
All over that?
No.
No?
No. I have a lot of pain.
You do?
Mm-hmm. But not compared to what I did have. So, there's that. And my head's clear.
I know a lot of people who are a pain.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Where's your pain?
Kind of everywhere. Like
Really?
if you have a flu, you know what it's like? You ache.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry that he's dealing with that. That sucks.
Yeah, it's like that.
Why do you have that?
I have no idea.
And they don't know?
Just luck. Just good luck.
No medical experts can...
No, it's probably immunological reaction.
Yeah. I mean, not to get on my high horse about medicine, but I'm always on the wrong side of the woke on medicine. Or maybe, I don't know.
You're on the wrong side of the woke fairly frequently recently.
But especially on that one. They really hate
That's a real expression, the wrong side of the woke, I guess.
They hate it when I went after obesity, and not in a mean way, just in a way that's saying, and it's so funny now that
people have this weird belief that like doctors don't adequately discuss health with patients and don't adequately discuss like weight. And then if you ask almost any fat person, they will tell you it's actually very frustrating how often their doctor, or at least some doctor, most people who are overweight have experienced a doctor making the issue about their weight when there was something else totally going on. And obviously, it's just very widely discussed. So this sort of like, oh, we've gone too far with the anti-fat stuff. It's just so bizarre. I mean, because really, it's just very small amounts of progress have been made. There's still lots of anti-fat sentiment, and the sort of fat acceptance movement is like usually just about like not hating yourself. And like from a psychological standpoint, it's way more motivating to work on yourself when you don't hate yourself, and you can, better motivate to improve your health in whatever ways you have control over when you feel like you're worth it and you're valuable, rather than, you're feeling less than because people mock you. It's just a matter of what type of motivation is going to work. So he says he wasn't mean, but I mean, it's just, you hear this argument all the time. People are so insensitive, and then they're like, oh, people are way too sensitive.
Ozempic is getting everybody back into shape. I notice these articles saying, it's not just good for weight loss. And they list like shape, the things it's good for. And I'm like, hey, you idiots. What it means is obesity was always bad for everything. And now that people aren't so fat, all these other things are.
And then these imagined enemies. I think Bill and Jordan will get along very well because they both have a lot of imagined enemies. They like to argue with imaginary entities rather than, like Jordan Peterson rose to fame fighting the imaginary threat of Bill's C-16, which, he was specifically called out by the Canadian Bar Association, who told him, you are misunderstanding this. You are literally wrong. You're just wrong about what this bill does. So they're going to get this pawn and then be threatening my Roxoka.
Getting better too. It's not the Ozempic.
I interviewed this psychiatrist, Chris Palmer, who works at the McLean Hospital in Boston. And that's, I suppose, the premier psychiatric hospital maybe in the world. And they're using the carnivore diet to treat schizophrenia, manic depressive disorder, and endogenous depression. So
that's
depression
all,
without
that's
a
all
cause.
meat.
It's all meat, yeah.
That's what you used.
Yeah, and he's had.
Bill said used like past tense, but I don't know. Is he not doing that now?
All meat, yeah.
That's what you used.
Yeah, and he's had remarkable success with it. And this is really something, right? Because those are very intractable conditions, especially schizophrenia.
Wow,
and
they should have just taken the pawn.
Like psychological in origin. They're so serious that it's very difficult to shake the suspicion that something has just gone seriously wrong, like physically, physiologically. And anyways, they're having, I think he told me that they're running 50 different studies examining the effect of diet on these serious mental disorders. So that's very exciting to watch.
And again, this is one of those things, meat, that really shouldn't even have a political dimension because it's just science, and the science is out. This is more evidence to me that, well, we don't know a lot of shit. This is always one of my issues that they argue with me about medicine is that, it's not an uncommon.
God, it's such a familiar way of being where he's just like constantly talking about like what other people say to him and making the issue about like what these supposed other people say. So my bishop's being attacked and that pawn, but I'm screwed. I just lost. There's no way to save the bishop while guarding that pawn. Let me just make sure I don't have some. So, peace. Okay, oh wow. Maybe that's why they didn't go for the pawn thing. Oh, you know what? What about this? Wow, I found a move. Guards both.
Common story to hear somebody say, yeah, I have some pain. They can't really figure out why. They can't figure out a lot. It's not an indictment. It's just that's the century we're living in, where they just still can't figure out a lot.
Yeah, well, people turn out to be complicated.
And medicine is very
Jeez. I love that shot. Jeez, that was kind of intense, man.
figure out a
I
lot.
mean, I agree with him, but it's just intense.
Yeah, well, people turn out to be complicated.
And medicine
I mean, wow, you could smile or something.
can't figure out a lot.
Yeah, well, people turn out to be complicated.
He seems
And
really
medicine
pissed
is
off.
very complicated.
Yes, that's for sure. And some things the medical profession do very well. They're very good at
Yes.
joint replacement.
So I believe Jordan Peterson is still licensed in Canada as a psychologist, but he definitely does not. He hasn't practiced for many years, probably close to 10 by this point, 8 or so. But he hasn't taught for years as well. I mean, in any sort of academic capacity. And I mean, I always tell people, I'm not a psychologist, I'm a social worker, but I always tell people, like, I've never heard anyone mention him in the psychological, mental health profession. I mean, it's not like he's known for his research. I know he did some research into like different personality types or something, but it's just important to understand he's known as a public speaker and public intellectual, quote unquote. I mean, so if I attack there, I think I should be okay, right? If they bring yeah.
Placements, for example.
They're good at many things. They're very good at, after they're being very bad at preventative medicine.
Yeah.
When you're right at the end of the line, swooping in at the last minute
Yeah.
with heroic measures.
It's a bad position.
It's hard to monetize preventive strategies, hey?
Correct.
And it's also hard.
Are either one of them going to say that maybe the fact that like certain necessary health treatments like preventative medicine are hard to monetize, maybe that's a sign that our healthcare system maybe shouldn't be based around monetizability and profitability and should maybe be a single payer healthcare system like many of the other countries in the world have and seem to enjoy.
To
Right.
get people credit for them.
That's so
You know,
true.
it's like,
Right.
here's a major problem you didn't have.
That's a
Yeah,
great point.
it's really rough. I mean,
Right.
that's a real strategic and tactical problem.
Yeah, I wonder what the solution to the issues of the profit motive in the healthcare field. I wonder what the solution to that is.
There have been attempts at times to pay doctors for how many people they keep healthy, to give them a crew of people, but those are
So ridiculous.
hard systems to set up economically.
Well, it's a hard sell to the people who make money on ill health. That's what it is. But you're right.
Have these guys never heard of the solution to this problem? Okay, so my bishop's being attacked.
I've seen those studies. Let's incentivize keeping people.
Yeah.
I think there was one in McLaren, Texas. They did it, the biggest one. And of course it works. You
Well, if you set up the incentive structures
you
properly,
can incentivize anything.
you can, yes.
But-
Oh no, they're
well,
taking
in any
that
event,
pawn.
you look, I
They
mean,
can't move the
I've
knight.
had doctors who always say,
That's bad.
I can tell when someone walks in the office if they're healthy, really. It's like,
That was
it's a
bad.
look
So I
that you get
probably
right
should have
away.
done something
I
else.
mean, this is part of Biden's
bad.
problem with, like, he just looked bad. You
Yeah.
can't look. You
Oh,
can't
wait,
look
they just
bad,
lost
and
their
then, of course,
night.
he sounded like a junkie when he talked, but for at the end. But
Wow, Bill Maher, so funny.
you look healthy. You look
Hooray.
hale.
Hale again. Bill Maher is just so charming. This is great. So the opponent forgot about my bishop because I moved it away. That's awesome.
Hooray.
And I know you have. You're starting your own college.
Yeah, well, it's well started. We have 30,000 students.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know whether he's under, like, I'm not saying this as an accusation. I just find it interesting. I'm not sure whether there is a legal responsibility for him to say a real number in this case. By the way, this is interesting. What if I do knight and I take, they're in check? No, that's not good. But it's so classy. If I take with the bishop, king, no. Attacking the... No, I can't move my knight right now. What am I talking about? Oh, you know what I can do, though? I'll just move there.
In 3 weeks? Yeah.
So, yeah, they're talking about Peterson Academy. He says it has 30,000 students after 3 weeks. Students. And I just want to replay that because I think Bill Maher just called it a college, which I don't know how. I don't think you can just call it a college if it's not accredited. Maybe you can. But, it's just interesting. It seems at first like Bill doesn't really know like what it is in terms of, is it an accredited college?
And I know you have, you're starting your own college?
Yeah, well, it's well started. We have 30,000 students.
Wow.
In 3 weeks. Yeah, and it's going great.
What's it called?
It's called Peterson Academy, which wasn't a name I was particularly fond of.
What did you want to call it, and why did you name it your name? Like, wow. He's like, I had to go with my name recognition, but I didn't even want to. Wow.
It's got that potential for something.
Physical or online?
Online.
I would have loved to hear what he was about to say. Has the potential for what? But yeah, see, Bill didn't even know, is it physical or online, so he doesn't know necessarily what they're talking about here.
Yeah. When we have...
Which is fair, because, like, why would you?
We have a stable of about 40 professors at the moment.
This is just a way for Jordan Peterson to monetize his audience. Fair enough. Patreon's not enough, or, that type of, crowdsource. He needs a bit more for these suits. Yeah.
They're top rate, and we launched with about 20.
Which I say in that tone of voice because, like, obviously there's nothing wrong with him, like, selling videos of, like, lectures to people. Like, that's fine. Is it a little weird to call it an academy and have it not be accredited and not necessarily moving in that direction and, not really make the effort to make it any sort of, like, school in any direct sense? Like, I don't know. That's subjective. I don't think it's not a big deal. I just find it so interesting, like these, because like a lot of people are just dying to like have intellectual exploration, and he puts on sort of the air of an intellectual, and it's just so fascinating that this is kind of, as that famous article about Jordan Peterson says, the public intellectual we deserve. As a society.
Courses, we have another 30 already recorded.
I mean, he's so past his prime now too, but he very influential in terms of like mainstreaming transphobia and giving a sort of scholarly intellectual patina to, bigotry. He's just totally against the idea of like talking about white people having any forms of privilege. Like, and he gave it an intellectual air for so long that he still has fans, even with all the nutso things he's done. All the tweets, all the different things that are just such a bad look.
They're the best courses that have ever been offered publicly in terms of their quality of content and delivery, and also the...
What does that mean, offered publicly? Like you're selling them, like, I mean...
Production values are unparalleled. It's Hollywood level production quality.
What does that mean, production value for a course?
Tight editing.
Editing of what?
Yeah.
The lecture?
Camera shots. So a lot of.
So when the students are watching online, it's not happening live?
No, it's not live. It's recorded in front of a live audience.
I see.
And we film.
I see. Bill's like, how am I supposed to respond to this?
Film people against a white background. And with no angles, and so we filled it all with imagery and text, AI generated, and they're beautiful. Actually,
AI generated. Is that exciting to some people? Yeah, I knew they were gonna put something on that square, but I'm trading. Forget about it. I'm ahead here. Significant material, right? They have 6 pawns, and I have 4 pawns and a piece. Okay, I'm up a piece for 3 pawns. 2 pawns, sorry. I'm up a piece for 2 pawns, so that's good, a little bit, but it's not huge. It's not necessarily winning. Let's get their rook off the back line. Is it going to go here? Should I just attack that pawn immediately? But then, yeah, I should. But then they advance this pawn is what they're going to do. I kind of like that regardless. Well, yeah, I do, and I'll tell you why. Because once they do that, I can put my bishop there, guarding this pawn, attacking their rook, making their rook move, giving me time to maybe put my rook here. So that should be good. I think that works. Let's see.
Horses are beautiful. And
So you don't not only hear what the professor is saying about the shout of Turin, but then you see it.
yeah, right.
Because you've added that. That's production value.
yeah.
Yeah, we certainly didn't have that when I was a kid. But on the other hand, you could raise your hand and ask the professor a question.
Yeah, well, that's an advantage
I got credit where credit's due. That's a good point.
if you're in a small course in a bricks and mortar university, but in
Brick
many
and
universities,
mortar.
the courses are immense. You have 500 students in a course, and
This
there's
is
no
bad,
interpersonal
actually.
interaction, and there's no reason,
Right, but what I wanna
fundamentally,
do
to
is
not to replace that
this.
with video, especially given the quality of our professors. Like I would say,
Okay, is Jordan... I mean, obviously Peterson is going to address the being able to ask questions deficiency.
at the typical state.
I mean, he doesn't want people to ask questions. Okay, that's not good. They should not have let me trade a pair of rooks. There's no way that's in their best interest. There had to be something better, but I like that I was threatening, putting a rook here. That was big.
University, let's say, 10% of the courses are of high quality educationally and in terms of their capacity to grip interest. And all of our courses are high quality. And so
What in your mind constitutes low quality? That it's more
dull,
dull,
and often wrong, ideologically addled, taught by people who don't.
Bill Maher can't even keep a straight face. First, he laughs at dull because it's a stupid answer, right? Like, I mean, Jordan Peterson just gets more and more vague, right? He's just like high quality, low quality. 10% normally is high quality, but we're all going to be high quality. Okay, so what's quality? Well, it can't be dull. It's like, okay. And then it can't be ideological. Okay, man, yeah. Sure, yeah, you're not giving an ideological education. I believe that. I'm sure there's zero ideology going on.
Don't know how to teach. I mean, when you train as a professor, you're not trained to teach, and it's not like faculties of education.
I mean, that's probably true to a certain extent, but like, again, the question is like, what about people being able to ask questions? And I guess we're moved on from that actually.
You say in the K-12 system, so being able to
know
lecture
what to
is a
do
rare
here.
gift. Most people use
Oh, you know what I'll
PowerPoint
do?
and read it, or they just read their notes,
They're
which
gonna
is,
start running.
that's a terrible thing to do to people. You just give people the damn notes if you're going to read them. And
Right.
PowerPoint, reading off a PowerPoint is not lecturing. No, if you're a good lecturer, first
No
of all,
shit,
you know
dude.
way
This is
more
all so
about
obvious.
the topic you're talking about than you actually have to deliver in the lecture. Like your knowledge should be
course.
very expansive. And then what you should be doing is
Oh, that was
modeling, because you have to realize, well, and you would realize this because you've done stand-up comedy and you know how to perform.
Oh, this is a vulnerable point.
It's called a lecture theater for a reason.
Oh,
It's-
no, but they
it's a
can't go
theater
there.
because it's a performance.
It's a bishop.
And then you might say, well, what are you performing? And
If
the
they
answer
know how bishops work now.
is you're performing, you're modeling how you wrestle with ideas. You're modeling how you think. When I do my lectures and tour, I never do the same lecture twice. It's always spontaneous. I
Yeah,
have
dude, and that's why it's like sort of not a lecture, and that would be at a college, and probably part of why you're not teaching anymore.
stories that I tell that are part of a set in a way, but I'm always trying to solve a problem or address a problem in real time. And if I'm fortunate
Yeah.
and the lecture works out well, it has a narrative arc and it has a punchline. Now, that doesn't always happen because I don't necessarily know where it's going. But all the people we pick to lecture are expert lecturers. They're captivating. And most of them,
I'm gonna get that
many of them are also revolutionary in their
Oh,
thinking.
no, they're gonna attack my
Two of
pawn
my
while they
favorites, for example, conceptually, Jonathan Pajot is an Orthodox icon carver from Quebec.
Oh, ThoughtSime has a video about him called like the poor man's Jordan Peterson or something. Like that was not the right call, I don't think, to
And
advance.
he's probably the deepest religious thinker I've ever encountered. And his lectures are great. And
These look, what you have to understand is like these guys and these like this stuff is like it's often just like knockoff, like academic stuff. You know, like I've watched just some clips and it's like, you know, even when Jordan Peterson, like when he's talking about like, you know, cultural symbols and archetypes, it's just like knockoff. You could just read, you know, I don't know. It's like a mixture of Carl Jung. I guess it's just like a mixture of Carl Jung, like Nietzsche. I mean, I don't. It's just like what I'm trying to say is the stuff that Jordan Peterson says and his ilk that's true is usually not that, you know, creative, and this is a famous expression. And the creative stuff is not true. So it's just like, you know.
he has done some work with a cognitive psychologist named John Vervaeke. He's also quite a revolutionary. He was a very popular professor at the University of Toronto.
Until what?
And they're putting forward a view of the world that's really new and exciting, I think, and meaningful to people. And so we're very interested and excited about
It's
this.
funny because I think
Oh,
of
wait, now
part
can
of
I
the
go here?
problem, what's going on on campus these days. And as we're taping this on September 11th, the schools are newly back in session. And I remember
Oh, I thought he was going to say something about September 11th. Yeah, these guys are obsessed with talking about college campuses.
when I was that age and heading off at this time of year, I couldn't wait to get back to my encampment.
Right.
Oh yeah, were you not involved in protests, Bill? That's shocking. Cuz like they did do protests back then. If you're not aware, like protests have been involved in a lot of social change. Actually heavily involved. But yeah. That was a good one.
So I could protest for a terrorist organization.
Okay,
But
yeah, because
apropos-
people are protesting for Hamas. They're not trying to just like protest for any organization that is fighting a military power that has killed tens of thousands of innocent people at the bare minimum just in the last year and a half, and is on other people's land and is an apartheid state that refuses to give people rights in so many different ways.
Of that, I really
But
think
yeah, I'm sure it's just that college students like terrorists, Bill, right?
An Iran-funded terrorist organization, right? And the protests are Iran-funded as well.
Oh, really? Really? And yeah, Hamas has probably got its funding from a lot of places, and there's a history of Israel actually influencing Hamas in its rise to power as a sort of controlled opposition situation, if I'm not mistaken.
What do you mean by that? Oh, Iran.
Iran.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought you meant the Rand Corporation.
No,
'cause that was
well,
back in
Yeah, I
no.
thought he said the Rand Corporation too.
About that either,
right.
but no, it's really appalling.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I feel like part of the problem with that kind of
You know
thinking,
what?
with
I'm gonna
what
get
has
that other
gone
pawn.
wrong with the very, very far left.
Oh,
which
they
is
put their rook there, and I'm kind of screwed,
absolutely
huh?
embodied in academia,
That's bad.
is that everything has to be a revolution.
Yeah, right.
I saw this quote from the kids back at Columbia the other day. They had put out a manifesto, and
This
they
is a
use
winning
language
move,
now
I
like
think.
we need to eradicate America at its root.
Yeah, right.
Like this is, by the way, something we heard in the late '60s from certain what they became sort of terrorist organizations like the Weathermen.
Yeah, definitely.
Isn't it Weather Underground? Whatever. I don't even want to look it up. I don't care.
You know,
Yeah,
it
much
start-
right out of the communist playbook. Eradicate the past, and all the people who lived in the past. That's just a side effect.
But I mean,
I don't know how much he's actually read on that subject. To be quite fair.
to eradicate America at its root, like what? So you're talking about
Bill's trying to say, what do they mean? Can someone please help me? Yeah, Bill, they probably they probably don't mean what Peterson's saying about killing a bunch of people. They're probably talking about like the systems that generate ongoing inequality, gross inequality. I mean, there's always going to be some inequality, but the systems in America, America, for example, has had a lot of bad stuff going on. A lot of people didn't have rights at the beginning of this country. So that's probably what they mean, is make sure we give everyone rights. Would probably be, again, these guys are bonding so hard because they both like not being charitable with their interpretation.
You see about a different kind of revolution.
I don't think I can
Yeah,
play a
this
move
what
here.
is your
revolution is more
revolution?
grounded in tradition.
Oh, wait, what? So he brings it back to Jordan's, to Peterson's school, school thing, the Peterson Academy. So let's see.
What? So you're talking obviously about a different kind of revolution.
Definitely. Yeah,
What
this
is
revolution
your
is more
revolution?
grounded in tradition.
That's how I like my revolutions, grounded in tradition. That's how I like them, for sure.
Well, part of that is...
Well, that's a more of a renaissance then. No?
Yes, that's right. That's a better way of thinking about it.
Just sucking each other off.
Definitely.
Because
Well, I think partly what we're struggling towards, and
You know
partly with
what?
Peterson Academy,
You know
is
what? Is this not a playable move?
it's a more synthetic view of the world. Like there is,
Oh,
sent
no,
you
they
my
queen immediately and they
book.
win.
I read it.
and so
I told
can
you. I
see-
gave you a
Yeah, I
blind
realized that, yeah. So I'm screwed. Yeah, I'm screwed. Okay, well, I'm going to just play again, but I'm going to take a quick break for a second, come right back. By the way, I'm doing this because I just wanted to, I thought it'd be funny. I felt like it. I was bored. And also I wanted to just do something extra for channel supporters. So thanks for supporting the channel. I was going to do a live stream and then I was like, I honestly, it's not that bad, but I don't really like live streaming. It's just weird to me. So I like doing this form where I get to work on something and then I release it. It doesn't need to be live. You know what I mean? We have better things to be doing. We can each be doing our own thing. And then you can put me on in the background. You know what I mean? But we don't have to be live at the same time. So yeah. Anyways, thanks for watching. Yeah. So whatever.
I know you did. And so you can see partly what I'm aiming at, and this is what many of the thinkers on Peterson Academy are aiming at, insofar as they're aiming at anything other than trying to express what they believe to be the truth, is a synthesis. And so I've been interested for a very long time in the concordance between evolutionary biology and psychology and religious mythology, because there's a deep
I got a beer.
there's a deep analogy, there's a deep concordance, which you'd expect. If knowledge unifies at the highest level, then there shouldn't be contradictions in the different domains of knowledge. And so,
I mean, sure, but it all depends on what questions you're asking and how you're looking for connections. And sure, there can be some connections between, evolutionary biology and, whatever he said, religion or mythology. Of course, dude, you're not the fucking first guy to think of that. Of course. But also, I feel like he was talking about the synthesis of ideas that his, staff is building at Peterson Academy, right? So, I mean, it's just kind of a heady thing to immediately go into a specific point that you like making or that you find very important, even if it's a very important point. I thought you were kind of explaining the synthesis of ideas of the different teachers, you have. So is that their synthesis maybe? And that's what he's trying to say, I guess.
I don't think there are. I think contradictions are apparent rather than real. They're a consequence of misunderstanding. So,
in all
and
cases.
so I'm trying to, and have been for a very long time. With this new book I wrote, this We Who Wrestle with God, the rule
Nice try, Bill.
been for a very long time. With this new book I wrote, this We Who Wrestle with God, the rule was that I wouldn't formulate any proposition that I couldn't justify scientifically.
The stuff Jordan Peterson is saying, maybe it's smart and complicated, but it is kind of just out of context. It feels like he's really shifting the conversation, which is fine, but it's okay, they were talking about the school and how it's going to be better because it's not low quality, right? I mean, oh, whoops. Oh no. I have to resign now because I have dignity. Or try one thing and then resign, yeah.
scientifically as well as from a narrative perspective. And so that was a fun exercise. It's a rigorous exercise, and it's been very useful to
And
me.
it's funny because, as I told you, it really brought me back reading your book to being at Cornell.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
The only good thing for me about Cornell was I did have intellectual epiphanies, and they did give me an amazing. This is the 1970s, so they were still teaching like horrible stuff, like what white people did.
Right.
Like
what white people did.
people. I'm sorry that it had to be white people who came up with a few of the good things but they did.
So, question: does Bill Maher really think that colleges are not teaching about like inventions white people came up with? Like, it's that age-old question: stupid, like willfully stupid, or just like not willfully stupid? Or what's a better way of putting that? Just like, okay, am I getting something? Just like, does he really think that anti-racist education, is about discounting the accomplishments of white people? Like, is it discounting it to say they use slave labor,
Did, and we still teach them. And now in colleges, I feel like that has to go out the window because George Washington had slaves or some, crazy shit like that. But
is it crazy to mention George Washington had slaves, or like just to not talk about his accomplishments? Like, I think the owning slaves is kind of a key detail. I think if I was writing a movie about the American Revolution, for instance, I would be like, you have to include the thing about how they owned slaves because they're quote unquote fighting for rights of people, and they are discounting the rights of slaves, so-called slaves, I should say, of non-white people, of black people, of women. Obviously didn't have rights, not just to vote. They were literally treated as property. Like many white people who didn't own land, I'm sure they didn't have all the rights. Like, it's a very key detail to the story. I mean, you can still learn about George Washington, you know what I mean? It's fine. Yeah, of course. He's, there's a lot of people to learn about. I mean, Bill Maher must understand on some level, oh man, there are definitely a lot of black people and other people whose accomplishments have not been discussed, right? Has anyone ever taken the time to talk with him about that? Like,
I got a great, I think, liberal arts education. And so that's kind of what your book reminded me of. But I mean, I'm in a different place than I was in the 70s. I've been an atheist, and I felt like I feel like you're a lapsed atheist. I feel like it's a paradox that someone of your extraordinary intellectual abilities is trying to reanimate this dead hooker called religion and bring it back to life in some way, or find what's useful in it.
It's just funny that this should be what they talk about. This is great. Yeah.
Why try to take these?
Because you get false substitutes emerge.
I know what does that mean?
Well, imagine that things
like capitalism, the belief in the free market being like the ultimate god. That's a good example, I think, of a substitute religion.
Imagine that your systems of ideas, imagine that they're either unified or not unified. Those are basically the options, right? And if they are unified, there's something under which...
I mean, I guess I don't. Are unified and non-unified understandings or whatever like the only option?
They have to be unified. The options of ideas. Imagine that they're either unified or not unified. Those are basically the options, right? And if they are unified, there's something under which they have to be unified. And if they're not unified, then they're in conflict, and that's not good. That makes you angry.
Oh my God, Jordan Peterson is making Bill Maher seem like a realistic, likable person in comparison.
Anxious, it makes you hopeless, it breeds social discord.
Ideas are in conflict, you're saying?
Yes. If
ideas are always in conflict.
But if they're in conflict too much, people go to war and they fall apart.
Well,
right? I mean,
people-
look, you want diversity and you want difference in opinion because
but
you want to keep things churning. But
what has made people go to war more than anything? Belief in who's the real God. I mean, religion.
I mean, that's
just
probably not even true, though. You know what I mean? Like, why do you just say that, like, so confidently? Like, how do you know, like, territory is not a bigger reason people go to war? Like, why do some people just feel so confident saying things?
I could take any number of reasons why I think it's better to junk the whole thing, but start with religions are supremacist just by their nature. If you're telling people what happens when you die, which nobody knows, and you're telling who the great master of the universe is, you kind of have to be in a place where you can't abide other thoughts on the subject. And certainly all religions are like that.
I'm trying to get
Islam
my
is
initiative
super
here.
supremacist in that way. And a lot of the people today who are speaking for it will tell you right to your face, why am I supporting this? Because Islam is the best. Of course, obviously. That's why we justify these things. And certainly the Bible.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Islam is the one you have to choose. I swear, Islamophobia is such a huge problem these days. As a Jewish person, I think you have the obligation to call out Islamophobia because I think it is like the anti-Semitism of our time. I mean, anti-Semitism, sure. Did Steve Bannon just throw up apparent Nazi salutes, weeks after Elon Musk did? And they're both very powerful people in the new dictatorship in the U.S. Yeah, and that's not great. But that problem of the Nazis is bigger than anti-Semitism. Nazis are not just anti-Jew, they're anti a lot of people. And in this day and age, they're clearly not just starting with Jews. Like the modern day Jews are undocumented people or like, immigrants in general or just like black and brown skinned people. And I just think it's just so, it's so transparent that Islam is, just really treated in the most bigoted way on the largest stage, even though, it's just different. We're not in 1938 anymore. And it's just different populations serve that function. Trans people, obviously, otherized, dehumanized, So, I mean, it's just, in that context, maybe don't use Islam as your example of, there's other fundamentalist religions. I mean, we live in a Christian theocracy in the United States where so much political decision-making is based on literal religious belief and faith rather than logic. And you're not going to mention that? You could talk about the way that Judaism is weaponized in Zionism.
Same thing. I mean, God is very supremacist for the Jews. I find it very amusing that the thing that they are accusing the Jews of today of doing, colonizing, ethnic cleansing, which would
oh my
be
God, dude, please don't just say Jews when you mean Zionists. Holy shit. See, but that's a problem not because it's like, oh, it's anti-Semitic and it hurts my feelings. Like, that's a problem because it is justifying the logic of settler colonialism and justifying the logic of might equals right. It's larger than just anti-Semitism.
true, are true in the Bible. That's exactly what God tells the Jews to do. Ethnically cleanse the Canaanites,
Yeah.
commit genocide.
Yeah, I believe that's totally correct, actually. And this is like the one thing Bill Maher is like right about.
If you have to.
Like,
God,
I'm just saying, like, religion. Like, when I liked Bill Maher when I was like 13, it was because I saw his movie Religulous and stuff,
God tells
And I was
them,
13.
Kill all the men. This is this in the Bible. You've written about it in there. To kill all the men, the Midianites, another number of people.
Okay.
Kill all the men and the women who aren't virgins, kids.
So they did just get a pawn, but I
mean, that's
wanted.
your standard pattern of human warfare.
Maybe can I put my?
I
bishop
know,
here
but
now?
for people who take a book as the guide to morality, it's filled with terrible morality. Club Random is brought to you.
Are you serious? In the middle like this? What?
Data rates may apply. But again, not to keep beating a dead horse about why religion is so horrible in any form, but if you read the
Okay, that's
teachings
a
of
bit
the
much, man, dude. Come on, man. You don't have to be like that.
Mormon Church until recently, the things they say about black people.
Yeah, Mormonism is like super racist at the core, and any honest Mormon will tell you that. Doesn't mean they have to give up their religion, though probably that's the smart thing to do for a lot of Mormon people. But it's built on racism, like the two different groups that are black and white skinned in their book. It's like it's very racist. One is evil and they're dark skinned. It's like a very racist sort of premise for a religion. And I have Mormon friends, ex-Mormon friends.
Just horrendous. The worst kind of.
I don't really have any Mormon friends, but I would. I mean, I wouldn't be against it. I just think, most religions, you got to take the good with the bad in that sense.
Racist thing. And they justify it by talking about that.
Ham.
No, that's interesting. They get it. The black people in religion get it from two sources. The Mormons talk about Cain.
Yeah.
That black people are a descendant of Cain, and because Cain is a murderer and he did a dark deed. I mean, they're very open about that's why they have dark skin, to remind us of the dark.
I mean, that might be true. That's at least close to the truth. I don't know if what he's saying is actual Mormon text, but might. Anyways.
Darkness in their past. I mean, it's just fucking ugly. Yeah, murder. The other thing that the Southerners in this country used was Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham.
Oh, you
Ham
know what? I
is
can
the
threaten checkmate.
contemptuous son.
Also the one who
Oh
wanted
no,
to
I
fuck his
can't because the
dad.
knight is guarding them.
I guess, or maybe both.
Oh,
I
but
don't
then
know.
I could.
But Ham, think the black line runs from Ham.
Right.
But both of them again use religion
Trying
to be
come
justifying what we would today
I just
call
lost
one of
that
the worst
bishop.
things, racist.
Okay, well, don't look. Right.
Is it worth it to
But that was a funny moment. Because Bill Maher's just, I don't think Jordan Peterson knows what he's trying to say at first or something, or it's just like...
Right.
But both of them, again, use religion
Damn, they just blocked
to be
me.
justifying what we would today call one of the worst things, racist.
Okay, well, don't look. Right.
Is it worth it to resurrect that whole structure when it comes with that? It's what I call the one turd in the pool theory.
Wow, they just did that immediately, but they just lost material. Why would they just lost a piece? They just did it immediately and lost a piece. They totally got cocky. They're getting annoyed at how long I'm taking, and they just played instantly.
That contains, we're okay with slavery. It's terrible on women. It's terrible on
I'm sorry.
homosexuals.
I'm tripping out because then they take my night.
It's like if somebody said, yeah, but you know what? There's only one turd in the pool. Jump on in. I wouldn't jump in if there was even one turd in the pool. And I wouldn't want to resurrect a book and a mythology that...
Well, okay.
You get me?
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing incoherent about that argument. Although I think it still leaves you in an awkward position, because the postmodernist would say, take a look at your stance and say, well, you defend Western civilization, and there's plenty of turds floating in that pool. Well, but
fair point. They're making each other look intelligent.
Okay.
Right.
All right. You win that one.
Well,
Is that a contradiction, Jordan Peterson, or is it just a apparent contradiction?
it's rough because
there are plenty of turds
we
floating
look
in
back
that
at
pool.
the past,
That's true.
right? And
but but here's the thing: we can fish our turds out. We had
This
slavery.
is so
but we
funny that's what they're talking about.
fished that turd out of the pool. You can't do that. The Bible is the Bible.
Yeah,
It's there, and it was written by God.
It was the Protestant evangelists that did that.
Did what?
Took that particular bit of pollution out of the pool, right? That was Wilberforce in the UK, and he was completely motivated by religious motivations.
Who were for emancipation.
He was the one who convinced the UK to put their navy against slavery.
In 1776, when our country was declared independent,
maybe I didn't know that.
24 people in this country who belonged to the Abolitionist Society. They were mostly Quakers. 24 people in the whole fucking country thought abolition of slaves was a good idea.
Yeah. Well, Wilberforce in the UK started out kind of as one.
Now that their queen's guarding their knight, they could just take my knight, and I can't take their rook because it's guarded by their knight. Wow, that's really bad.
But it gathered steam.
Right.
It gathered steam. And 87 years later, 7 years later, we did something about it. That's the big argument against religion versus science. It's self-correcting. We can be self-correcting. Religion, to a lot of people, seems too rigid. I mean, its virtue is that it's set in stone. This is what we believe. That's what they're counting on, is that people want that sort of certainty about something.
Okay, so
it's not going to change. That's what the Pope is always saying.
So one of the criticisms that Christ levies against the Pharisees in particular is exactly that criticism. He says to them, this is one of the things that sets himself up for crucifixion, because it's a very vicious
didn't even notice that.
Insult. He tells the Pharisees that
I did think about it, and then I forgot about
they
it.
worship their own doctrines as if they're religious truths, and that they would have killed the prophets.
But now they're not
Had they been around in the time of the prophets that they purport to worship, they would have killed them. Said that they walk across the graves of their own prophets. Yeah. They haunt the graves of their own prophets. That's a good way of thinking about it. So he accuses them of a very deep cynicism. And he's trying to make the same point you're making, which is that you're not supposed to worship the static doctrines of men as if they're religious doctrines, and that there's something in the transformation process that isn't encapsulated in the letter of the law. So what would you say? You don't privilege the letter of the law over the spirit of the law.
Yeah, I did.
And I think part of what the genuine religious enterprise is the attempt to identify what that spirit is, that dynamic spirit. And I think that can be done. I think, and it has an affinity, for example, with this idea that it's incumbent on you to voluntarily confront the tragedy and malevolence of life. And that if you do that, it will transform you. And we know that clinically. Like, all the different schools of psychotherapy converged on a few realizations. One of them was that it was useful to get people to get their story straight, to recount their story. Right. Another was that if you expose people to the things that they're afraid of and that they're avoiding, that they get stronger. That works. That's how you help people overcome anxiety, for example, socially.
Exposure therapy, of course. Okay. Okay, so I get that the conversation is just going to flow and stuff, but like, I feel like what Jordan Peterson's saying, so he's saying there's like these unities, then that justifies faith in religion because it helps you perceive these unities, I think.
Exactly. It's also the fundamental mechanism of learning, is to put yourself on the edge of disaster and dance there, and that expands you.
Gordon Liddy once said that he was afraid of lightning, so he tied himself to a tree during a storm.
Okay.
I mean, that's an extreme version.
And now we know there isn't a God, because if there was, and it was Gordon Liddy tied to a tree.
That's funny. I don't know who he is, but I've it's good to see them laughing together. Jordan Peterson just made a joke. Oh, everybody. Ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary folks, Jordan Peterson just made a joke.
Yeah, but look, you use exposure training in therapy.
It was about killing someone, but it seemed like it was funny. I don't know who the guy was, but it seemed like it was funny, I guess.
All the time. And a lot of what you do when you're trying to help people heal is return to that idea of the snake on the staff. It's like, what are you afraid of that's stopping you from moving forward? That's what you try to find out in therapy. It's like, what is it that's paralyzing you? Okay, now can we break that down?
Sure. Not always, but maybe sometimes that would describe therapy.
Into manageable bites so that you can confront it. And people, see, it was a weird thing because the behaviors were the first
what
people.
point is he responding to right now? That is just my question. Like, I get what he's saying. And you could say it's worth saying, but what point is he responding to exactly?
That figured this out, that you could expose people to what they were afraid of voluntarily, and that they would become less afraid. That was the theory. They'd become less afraid. The psychoanalyst said that's not going to work because maybe someone's afraid of an elevator, but they're not really afraid of the elevator. They're afraid of death. And if you get them to relax about the elevator, their fear will just pop up somewhere else.
Right.
But that isn't what happened. What happened was that if you got people to face any one thing they were afraid of voluntarily, they started to learn that they were more capable than they thought.
Sure.
And that made their bravery generalize. And that's really what kids do when they go out into the world, right?
And then the
they
psychoanalysts were like, whoa, their bravery generalized. You're saying that psychoanalysts just thought because there's deeper unconscious things going on in our fears that it's not necessarily good to extinguish a specific fear. I mean, even just taking him at his word on that, like, it just... And then the solution is that you generalize your bravery. Like, obviously you generalize your bravery. Yeah, I mean, maybe he's referring to real, like, research. Like, it's just, yeah, fine, I guess.
A challenge and they overcome it, and they learn that they're the sort of creature that can find a challenge and overcome it.
Yeah, of
and
course.
And that generalizes.
But what are we talking
And that happened in psychotherapy. And then there's a radicalization of that idea in the Gospels and in this story of the brazen serpent. It's like there's no limit to that. You take the worst, and this is also part and parcel of hero myth, because there's
oh my God, that's my favorite thing when people say part and parcel. The first place I heard that is from in the Bhagavad Gita. In the Bhagavad Gita, they say part and parcel a lot of times. And anytime someone says it, it reminds me of the Bhagavad Gita. And what's his name? Prabhupada? I forget his full name. But you know, I think it's strange, but, you know, people have all kinds of expressions. Part and parcel. It's like, okay, you could just say part. No, we're not shipping cargo here.
The ancient story we have, literally, is a variant of the dragon treasure story, right?
Of course.
That the quest is...
I love that part in the book.
Yeah. It's a very useful thing to know.
Look, if you're a person who has been listening for this last half hour and doesn't know what the fuck we're talking about, that
I'm right there with you. Like Bill's like, I'm right there with you. I don't either.
Book isn't for you. But if you're a person who has even a little bit of understanding of the Bible, you don't even have to be religious. It's a historical document. I really found this book so fascinating. It's so great. It's like what you were describing about your lecture. It's like your lecture in a book form. You know, somebody who knows how to tell a story, make you think differently of things. Even in the blurb I gave you, and you're a friend, I'm trying to be supportive. I had to even say at the end, I didn't get all the way with him. He didn't convince me, because I feel like you're more religious than you used to be, or at least willing to give it a try. And maybe that has to do with you getting sick. I don't know.
I don't think so.
But what a ride to go on.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
I love that book.
I'm glad to hear that.
And people will too. I mean, you just have to be interested in great stories. I mean, why does the Bible survive? A lot of it is good stories. It's a lot of stories.
Oh my God. Like, I don't know. There's a lot of filler in there.
There's stories you need to know too.
Both part, you know, all the parts.
And it doesn't bother people that they're told both testaments are an anthology. It's funny that in the New Testament they right out say this is 4 different versions, and they're not even going to match, and we don't care. The Old Testament, I think this is still the case, but certainly when I studied it in college, they identified 4 main writers of the Old Testament. They called them J, E, D, and P. And they would be like, J wrote this in 850 BC, and then obviously this is added. I mean, this is how scholars see it. But it's kind of the same thing.
It's an aggregation.
It's an aggregation of people over... Now, the New...
Are they talking about his Peterson Academy? Like, is the same thing, or what's the same?
Testament, it's much closer. Mark is about 70 AD, and the last one,
old and new.
John, is about 110. So there's about 40 years. But all of them take place well after Jesus died. They never knew Jesus, the gospel writers. The only one who was close to Jesus' time is St. Paul, who's writing in the 50s. Jesus dies in 33. And he knows nothing about Jesus. It's so weird that the people who wrote later know everything about him. Paul doesn't even conceive of Jesus as someone who lived on earth. He said if he had lived on earth, he wouldn't have been a priest. He wouldn't have even been a priest. That's in St. Paul. He doesn't know anything about Mary.
Wasn't he a rabbi?
Joseph, the virgin birth, the crucifixion.
Wait,
to
who?
know anything on earth, he wouldn't have.
Oh, he's talking about one of the apostles.
But the people who wrote later know everything about him. Paul doesn't even conceive of Jesus as someone who lived on earth. He said if he had lived on earth, he wouldn't have been a priest. He wouldn't have even been a priest. That's in St. Paul. He doesn't know anything about Mary, Joseph, the virgin birth, the crucifixion, miracles.
Crucifixion. It says fiction right in there. It's not supposed to be explicitly historical.
Water, fishing with the guys, and then nothing. I find that kind of weird. Today we are
Oh
talking.
my God, yo. 2 ads in half an hour. Okay, hopefully that's it for the ads.
.com/rent buy or an online price.
No shortage of things that are incomprehensibly strange in the biblical library.
So being sick had nothing to do with.
Not much. No, I wouldn't say so. I mean, what did being sick do? Well, it made me more grateful. That's for sure.
Sure.
But isn't that wrapped up with religion?
Well, that's partly why I'm bringing it up. I mean, I was in excruciating pain for 3 years. And so now when I'm sitting here and I'm not...
By the way, speaking of pain, I'm like rocking back and forth and I'm standing in the first place because I just like I sit a little bit too much. I don't even sit that much lately, but I worked up an issue by sitting too much over the last year or so. And it's diagnosed as lumbar radiculopathy. I thought it was a radiculopathy. But it's basically a pinched nerve. And so I get numbness in one of my feet and I'm working on it. But I'm doing like all these PT workouts and stuff. But yeah, standing's good for me. And I'm like rocking because I'm like just trying to feel good. And I'm doing okay. But yeah.
On fire, I'm reasonably pleased about that when I have enough sense to remember.
Can I just take?
Right.
And that is that a permanent change?
Wait, I can't take because if I take, they sack the rook. And if I take back, that's not that great. No.
I suspect so. 3 years is a long time.
I mean, it does sound like what God did to Job. Just saying.
That's actually so funny. I gotta give credit there.
Is that a permanent change? I suspect so. 3 years is a long time.
I mean, it does sound like what God did to Job. I'm just saying.
Well, I think
Jordan
that
Peterson just doesn't even crack a smile, bro. It's a joke. Chill out.
to everybody to some degree. I mean, every single person. I have a
Job. I'm just saying.
I didn't mean to replay that.
Well, I think
Like
that happens to everybody to some degree. I mean,
Okay, here we go.
Every single person in the course of their life has to deal with the fact that somewhat random, extremely unpleasant things come along, and to some degree, even independent of your moral conduct.
Oh, totally.
And then, well, just look. If you're a bad actor, the probability that horrible things are going to come your way is all things considered quite.
Jordan Peterson didn't like how much Bill Maher agreed with him on that point, so he actually felt like he had to modify what he was saying.
Increased, but
yes and no. I mean, nothing bad happened to Saddam Hussein until we captured his ass and hung him. But he had 65 years of being able to act like the most ridiculous.
How is Saddam Hussein what you think of, dude? Like, this is just like a normal. Like, Jordan Peterson's trying to make the point that like in everyday life, like your average person experiences more hardship the more they do bad things, which frankly is a fair point. It's a bit more realistic, and it's funny that he starts by saying like a lot of what happens to us in life is outside of our control, or a lot of like what we achieve is independent. Whatever the point was, and then Bill Maher agrees, and then he changes it to be like, well, actually, it does make a big difference how we act morally. It's just funny that he changes sort of expression there. He didn't like that Bill Maher agreed with him in that way.
Tyrants in the world and get away with it. Other people, again, they don't do anything and something bad happens. I feel like when people connect their behavior with some sort of punishment or reward, that's childish. That's when people go karma. I did a whole thing on this on my show once. What a bunch of bullshit, karma. Americans interpret karma to mean like, you took the last parking spot and now shit's going to happen to you. That's Schadenfreude. That's not karma. But that's how people think of it. Karma. Oh, yeah, it's going to come back and get you. No, I'm
Karma,
sorry.
weaponized karma.
Weaponized karma. No, life is random. Good people get punished for no reason.
So he's just, I don't know that he's aware of it in this moment, but he is just obviously completely disagreeing with what Jordan Peterson said, which is totally fine. I've disagreed with a lot of things he said. But I don't know if he really gets, because he's not saying it like he is, but he's totally disagreeing and saying that things are random, which is just absurd. Obviously, but I mean...
And bad people go unpunished. You just, yeah, you're right. I mean, if you're some sort of a...
They just, don't like nuance, I guess.
Petty criminals always committing crimes, you're probably going to wind up in jail, and that's not good. But not everything has a logical connection to it.
Well, and lots of times good people suffer terribly.
Terribly.
Right, and that's partly what Job is trying to deal with. And,
Exactly.
And part of what he does do is
He took that so seriously.
It's a strange thing because he takes refuge in his own ignorance, and I think there's some utility in that. There has to be, because we have to, if we don't operate
Oh my God, is he
on
going to
the
cry?
assumption
No, never mind, sorry.
that there's something like an intrinsic moral order, it's very difficult for us to conjure up the courage to continue to exist when things go seriously sideways. But it's worse than that. It's worse than that because, and this is why I brought up the Cain story earlier. If you are tortured, even unjustly, and you lose faith in yourself and the structure of existence, it isn't only that you become demoralized.
Wait, hold on. I just want to check something.
It's worse than that because, and this is why I brought up the Cain story earlier. If you are tortured, even unjustly, and you...
So that's crazy. He specifies unjustly tortured, so he believes in torture. What?
This is why I brought up the Cain story.
Torture's bad.
The Cain story earlier. If you are tortured, even unjustly, and you lose faith in yourself and the structure of existence...
I'm not surprised because I remember someone saying that he supported hitting kids in his famous 12 Rules for Life book, so I guess it makes sense that he believes in torture too.
It isn't only that you become demoralized, it's that you tilt
Can I get
towards
away with
malevolence.
taking that knife?
You start to work against things. And this is why, for example, I'm not thrilled in the least with the antinatalist types. They make this claim that...
Because if I take... Then if they take this pawn and I go here... actually, that works fine.
Existence is characterized by suffering that's so intense that it would be better if consciousness itself just ceased to exist. And you can make... That's Mephistopheles' case, by the way.
Of course.
It's Silenus in Greek mythology.
Well, you can make a case for it.
What would be better to have never been born?
Exactly. Yeah. Now, and you might say, okay, fair enough. What you're doing essentially is saying that the suffering in existence invalidates its utility.
Yeah.
But what if it is the case that if you believe that you become an agent that produces suffering? Well, that is what seems to happen, is that once you turn against life, look, everyone's going to have a time in their life when they think, oh my God, really? Is this worth it? You watch someone you love suffer, or maybe you're in agony for doing something good, let's say in the worst possible situation. You think, really? Really? And so then maybe you get cynical and you get bitter. But the problem is that has a direction too.
Damn. He's really worked up.
That is what happens to Cain. He starts out cynical and bitter, but he ends up murderous, and his descendants are genocidal. That doesn't seem like a good alternative. And so what you see in Job is this insistence, and it's a terrifying insistence that you are required
I didn't really think about how funny this would be with their respective takes on religion.
Maintain faith in your essential goodness, despite your flaws, which is already a hard thing to do, and your faith in the fundamental benevolence of, what would you say, of the created order. Because anything else hurts you, but it's worse than that. It produces a kind of malevolence that spreads. And I think that's, you asked me what the relationship was between me being ill and this interest in religious belief. And I said that wasn't the primary mover. The primary mover for me has always been the study of atrocity. Because I spent a lot of time as a psychopathologist studying the actions of the people who have done the worst things. And they're unimaginably bad. I mean, Iris Chang's book, The Rape of Nanking. The Nazis are the good guys in that book.
Well,
Right. I'm serious. That's how rough.
Yeah, that's interesting.
okay.
Was.
For those who may not remember, 1937, the Japanese are on the march.
Yeah.
They're about to, Pearl Harbor was 1941, so this is 4 years before Pearl Harbor, and they were on the march in Asia, and they went into China, Manchuria, and what...
Yeah, they were a fascist dictatorship, right? I mean, that's what they do, fascist dictatorships.
They did. I remember reading somebody's column recently.
Expansionist, colonizing, settling, violence.
On the anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And it went into great detail about what the Japanese did, not just in Manchuria.
Well, Iris
in
Chang
Nanking.
committed suicide after writing that book.
Oh, wow.
Boy, when it's so bad, even the book writer kills it.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, this guy said, I know there's a lot of hand wringing in America about Nagasaki and Hiroshima, not in Asia. They were not.
So you just took this guy's word for it? Is that right? Because you believe that people should take your word for everything you say. So you, not so, but also and because you just take other men's words about things like that, not realizing they don't have, it's not the type of thing you should take someone's word about.
Not upset at all that the Japanese regime was taken out as
It's about all the like innocent people killed, Bill.
brutally as it was, because what they did, I
In
mean,
China?
to your point about
They were
the
already going to lose.
rape of Nanking, was just like,
So they deserved it. It's this ideology, this shared like neoliberal, neoconservative, capitalist, like dominant, hegemonic ideology of like revenge, or like, you know, people deserve pain and suffering if they've done something, or there's any justification that is, you know, devised about it by the powerful.
we won't like.
See, well, and that's also the conundrum at a relatively deep level that's being contended with in the Old Testament. It's like, so the Canaanites in general, like from a narrative perspective, the Canaanites are the evil descendants of Cain.
Right.
Okay, and so the people that are being fought against are the cynical, bitter, twisted, nihilistic, genocidally motivated, sadistic murderers, let's say. Well, then the question is, if that's
There's a lot of
the enemy
words.
that you're up against, what exactly is the moral thing to do? You know, and you just made a case, you know, painful it is to point it out, is that you made a case that there are patterns of behavior that are so despicable that
Jordan Peterson's like, I spent a long time studying atrocities. Bill Maher's like, I think dropping atomic bombs on cities was justified.
what's justified in that situation? Was the atom bomb justified? Well, you know, we're arguing about that now.
Yeah, we are. What do you
And
think?
People take the same tack with regards to the firebombing of Dresden,
Yeah.
right? And you think, well, you know, the Nazis, they were pretty bad. And so what do we do about
Yes,
that? And the
good
answer
job.
is, well, you know, we don't exactly know. It's not like it's
It's not that complicated. It's like, you shouldn't bomb civilian areas, period. The only possible, you know, it has to be like no civilian casualties, in my opinion. It's not that complicated.
simple. You know, how do you limit your reprisals? Well, we're dealing with that right now with the situation in Israel.
Did you
Yeah. You could say more about that.
Did you see the guy on Tucker Carlson recently who was giving a revisionist history of?
Was it Cooper? Was that his name?
I don't remember his.
Wow, that's how much they both like Tucker Carlson, that it's understood that like he might have seen the recent episode.
Name.
And he
so.
knows the
never
guy by last name.
heard of him. Tucker
Yeah.
Carlson introduced, and of course we're talking about Tucker Carlson, who I think is crazy insane about a lot of things.
I'm
But
just
he
bringing
introduced
up unprovoked that I watch his show.
him as like the most important historian of the blah blah blah, and this guy, I'm just paraphrasing
Yeah.
like mad, but like, no, you got it all wrong. Hitler was the good guy and Churchill was the bad guy. Now, you would agree that's insane, right?
Yeah.
Okay, because
I love the direct question. Let's go, Bill. That was dope to ask a direct question. And Jordan Peterson's like on the spot. Let's see if he walks it back.
bad guy. Now, you would agree that's insane, right?
Yeah.
Okay, because there are people in this world who think that that's who you are.
I'm-
That I am.
Me? Yes, I
You
know.
know I'm not one of those
Yes,
people.
I do
but I'm just
understand
saying,
that.
like,
This is
when
so
you're
cute.
not fully on the woke train, you are somehow just thrown all the way across the field into that bin.
I don't think Jordan Peterson's a Nazi per se. I think he's definitely pandered to Nazis before. There are clips of him saying really sus things about Hitler. How he was like, it was about how he, like, it would have been more logical, like something about how Hitler was acting irrationally by not like running the country in a responsible way. But it was like, well, that ignores that he was serving his own motives and he was doing things to kill the people he wanted to kill. I think Peterson might have said something like, it would have been smarter to like put people to work. Or no, he didn't say that because of course they put people to work. But anyways, I don't think he's a Nazi. I think he's very bigoted against people of color and trans people. He just based on his weird way of talking about privilege, and then obviously all the refusal to gender people correctly. But mostly, I think he's mostly interesting to me because he seems to me to be a charlatan. That's how he comes off as an appearance. Not that I would ever call him a charlatan, but he just comes off that way, which I find very interesting. But I think he's more of a charlatan than a Nazi. He's not like Steve Bannon or someone who he lives in a world of symbols and ideas. He doesn't really care about like enforcing a political program. I don't think.
That's what bothers me about the way people react to you. It's like,
I shouldn't say that.
And
He
me.
definitely has political programs that he would want to see advanced. I would see him as like certainly a right-wing conservative. I mean, he doesn't know shit about politics. He's just like a retired professor who like made a shitload of money being a YouTuber. Like,
I have some objections to it too.
yeah, and me. It's
Yeah.
like you. It's just
Yeah,
so,
how's that
it's
going
so,
for
it's
you?
So
Because
childish.
You've
and
been
it's so naive and childish.
you've been standing up to the woke mob more and more. And
course.
I can't go
yeah,
here
so
'cause
what's
this would
been the
trap.
consequence?
Well,
Not
the
of course.
conse-
Not many people are doing
No,
that.
you're right. Well, the consequence is some people left the building. I can't give an estimate, and I don't care, and I don't
oh no,
miss
but then
them.
I go here.
Other people joined. Like, there's a lot of people in this country who are tired of the hate and the hating, and I am one of them. I don't want to hate half the country. And
I love that
don't
I got
hate
my
half
king to the
country.
other side of the board.
I would never vote for Trump, and I think he's an abomination. And Kamala, do I have to love everything? No. And it's fine. And I thought she was great last night.
What a lib!
And I can't be more thrilled that I would put my money on that she's going to win the election.
Unfortunate.
But I don't hold my tongue.
She obviously
about
would have
what-
been better. The Democrats are obviously better than the Republicans. Democrats are like not great, but this is a nightmare situation of dismantling the federal government completely.
Is insane about the other side because it's not nearly as threatening as not conceding elections, which Trump does not do. So that's where I am on that. But I also understand
Yeah, I
that
didn't see him saying that this past election was rigged. That's strange.
Trump, I think, will go away after this. I think he's kind of finally
This is
reached
hard to
his Joe
watch.
McCarthy stage where it's like people are tired of it. It just took longer. But Trumpism won't go away. And I would define Trumpism as a fear of the insanity of the far left, which is not completely unjustified. And therefore, anyone is better than that. And Trump...
Dude, just... he's like a baby-brained perspective on things.
...proves it, because he is that anyone. If he's okay, if he, in all his monstrosity, is still better than what you fear about
Sorry.
That's a problem the left has to deal with. It would be so easy. This thing I just mentioned about Colombia, where they were saying we want to eradicate the United States as it is. How about pick some Democratic politician, pick that as your Sister Soldier moment. Remember Sister Soldier? That's what Clinton, he made a thing about a rapper who had said, we should take a week out and just kill white people. Now, no one was...
It'd take longer than a week.
It would take... Exactly. But
Jordan Peterson, joke number 2. Let's go.
Not committed
she was
to the
being
task.
reasonable. She said, let's take a week.
Okay.
And nobody really took this seriously. He purposely picked on that. And someone could do that. Does anybody think most kids in America...
I don't know how I guard all 3 of these squares at the same time, which are all being attacked. It's not ideal. But I'm up. They have 5 pawns. I have 6 pawns and a knight. So I'm up by a whole piece. I'm good. I'll drop a pawn.
Want to eradicate America? Of course not. But just pick out something to signal to the middle of this country we're not as crazy as the super crazies on the far left. Just pick it. That's a Sister Soldier moment. We don't want to eradicate America. Okay?
Yes, that's so true in retrospect, Bill. 5 months ago, you were so right that like the way for the Democrats to win is to make sure that they show that they're not too progressive or left-wing. That's a really good point, and I'm sure that'll work out.
So Trumpism will not, they will find someone. They will find another Trump. It's not really just him. As long as there's things that scare them about
I don't want to give that pawn
you've gotten
up.
in trouble with gender and the hysterics about racism, not that it isn't a real thing, but all this,
Okay. Bill Maher
freedom of speech
says racism is overblown.
Issues, parenting issues, all these things that really scare them. And again, not completely without justification.
Well, there's plenty of reason to be scared of the radical left.
That's what I'm saying.
Right. It's like Jordan Peterson's not right-wing. He just is against the left.
Until you take care of that problem, they will always come up with a Trump. That's it.
Yeah, no, that's not it. That's not really a great understanding of Trump. It is true to call right-wing a reaction, but it's not really useful when you don't talk about the value of what they're reacting to and you sort of come off painting like you're blaming, like you're taking away the agency from right-wing ideology and you're acting like the problem is what they're reacting to rather than their reaction to it.
I spent 5 years working with Democrats, trying to pull them to the center. And I had a lot of behind-the-scenes conversations with people. Virtually none of them public, because virtually no one would talk to me publicly.
Are we talking about politicians?
Yes, and many of them. And I asked them all, on the Democrat side, I asked them all the same question, purposefully. And I asked this to RFK too. When does the left go too far? Because obviously the left could go too far. And none of them would answer. And so,
really?
Not one.
That RFK could answer.
Not one. Dead serious.
In private?
In private as well.
Come on.
No, I'm telling you the truth. And
I know some people who would answer that.
Well, look, it's also, I stopped doing a fair bit of that.
Oh, yeah, that's such a good question, man. When does the left go too far? That's really, really the question that we need to be answering. When does the right go too far, Jordan? Is the right going too far right now?
At about a year and a half ago. And things have changed. There are more people on the moderate Democrat side who are willing to draw a line with regard to the radical leftists, but they're still not very good at defining it. So they'd reverse the question and ask me, like, when do you think they go too far? And I thought that was simple. It's like equality of outcome. And the
Dude,
universal
like, no one wants equality of outcome. That's absurd. Like equality of outcome in the sense that people should have the basics, the absolute basics, access to health care, a roof over their head, a room to live in off the street, food, water, shelter, health care. That's what we mean when we say equality of outcome. No one needs to have the same amount of money.
response to that was always the same. Oh, they don't really mean that.
Yeah.
Well,
It's like, yeah, they do.
To be fair,
That's the best you got? Yeah, they do? Nuh-uh.
it is more complicated than just that. Equality, meaning equality of outcome, I believe in that too. Equity is what they changed it to a lot.
Bill Maher just said he believes in equality of outcome. He does not. I don't think he means that.
A lot of people on the far left, and
I think this whole thing is a smokescreen. The equality of outcome versus equality of opportunity. I think it's very vague, and it's just not. It's not helpful.
went along with all of it, means no. Some people started out not from the same place, so we should make an effort to redress that. I believe in some of that theoretically, and some of it in how you would put it into practice. You can't just say,
Okay, check.
okay, let's. Some people weren't even at the starting gate for the first 350 years, and now go. Of course, there's going to be remedial, I think, things that
Bill Maher is less ideologically driven. He's more just like pragmatic, and then he's just like a little bit of like an old guy and a little bit like ignorant in a lot of ways. But he's not as like, I need to prove that I'm such a smart guy like Jordan Peterson.
we can do, and we're doing many of them.
I think Bill Maher is trying to prove he's a good guy, prove to himself he's a good guy, and Jordan Peterson's trying to prove he's a smart guy. It's very obvious that Jordan Peterson's trying to prove he's a smart guy.
We're doing some of them anyway.
The way he talks.
But do I think it means we should make it that medical school is not something that you can only get into completely by merit? No, because no one wants a
Dude, what are you even talking about, man?
doctor who got there by affirmative action.
What the fuck are you even talking about, dude? Dude, if you think about it, like, Bill Maher, you've gotten affirmative action. Like, if you were not white, like, you wouldn't have had the career you had. Like, your privilege is part of why you feel entitled being such an edgelord. You know what I mean? Such a weird, dull edgelord.
Yes.
Right, but you would count what I said to be valid, right? That you can't say if you started 300 years late, we expect you to be.
I guess this is one of the things that probably tilts me in the more conservative direction, and partly as a social scientist, is that
Okay,
well-meaning interventions seldom have the outcome that's designed.
Correct.
So even and it's really a
I
radical
would agree.
problem. Okay, so the historical solution to the problem of unequal distribution of, say, even of opportunity is that everyone is treated the same under the law, regardless of anything, regardless of wealth, regardless of race.
Yeah, in certain contexts, sure, of course. Like, to be able to work or rent a house or something.
Right.
Age, status, it's the same. Now,
I'm going to get them.
obviously, there's elements of that appear unjust. So if you make $1 million a year and you get $1,000 fine for speeding, that's a lot different than $1,000 fine for someone who makes $12,000 a year. And so then you might say, well, maybe your fine should be income adjusted. Okay,
Yo,
but the problem,
I've literally never, ever heard anyone talk about fines being income adjusted, dude. What the heck? Like, what? Dude, we just want people to have enough to support themselves. Fines being income adjusted?
problem with that is like, okay, you're differentially
Of course.
privileged with regards to your wealth. Well, how many dimensions
bring
of
the
differential
queen back?
privilege
Trade
are
queens. I
there? And the
win.
answer to that is Well, there's as many dimensions as there are differences between people. And that's an infinite number of differential advantages and disadvantages. And so I'll give you an example that I think is
Dude,
quite
that's
germane.
such a ridiculous argument. Oh, there's a million, like everyone's different. So, why even talk about differences? I won.
I'll give you an example that I think is quite germane. So there's obviously disparity in wealth. Well, one of the best predictors of wealth is age. Older people are richer. Well,
Dude, if we're comparing wealth, like we should be like not even, we should be controlling for age. Like it's not about age. That's not the point. For sure. That's not the point. But also, sure, you're talking about capital accumulation, I guess.
why? Well, obviously, because they've had their whole life to work.
Race.
So, yeah.
Even more.
Okay, but let me make the case with this for a minute. Okay, so then you might say, well, it's very unfair that the old people have the money. It's like, yeah.
Just like when you refuse to look at classes in society, and even when you're talking about economic inequality, you have to make it about someone's identity, something about them as a person rather than their position in society. It's just your brain, man. It won't do it.
Fair enough, buddy. But the young people have the youth. And if I'm serious, and if you took the old person and said, look, you give me all your money.
Right.
I'm 18. You give me all your money, and I'll be 65, and you get to be 18 and broke.
But would you actually take
Whoa.
that bargain? Because I wouldn't. Even though I'm punching 70 in the mouth, I still wouldn't do it because my head would still be my 18-year-old head, and I just couldn't take any more of that. Your stupidity, or at least my stupidity at that age, caused so much pain, unnecessary pain in my life that
I'm sure, and in the lives of other people, I'm sure.
Rather be this age.
Well, that's another sign of differential advantage, is you've got the disadvantages of being old, but now you're not quite as stupid. So,
Not quite.
that's
no,
right.
It's awesome not being stupid.
Yeah, right.
It just is awesome. There's like that old commercial, priceless. It's priceless, not being fucking stupid.
What do you think is better about you now than when you were young?
I'm not fucking stupid.
Well,
I don't make stupid mistakes. I don't make that. I mean, I'm sure people would say, oh, Bill, you said this the other week, and I meant it, and it wasn't horrible.
Well, frequency and intensity also matter.
Also, I'm mixing dangerous chemicals every week, okay? I'm playing third base okay? I'm going to get more hard-hit grounders. And, but
How is he playing third base in? By drinking and smoking, or by like just doing something else? Like by just like going on the topics of the day? Like what?
personally, much more, even my personal life. I mean, men take a very long time to mature. I mean, when a woman says like, boy, you need a 40-year head start. Yeah, you do.
Like, why do you think that is? Because, why do you think that is, that men... Because I think it has to do with the privilege that restricts you from understanding the consequences of your actions, and it delays that understanding.
A 40-year head start to be on the same level. It's just, it's crazy how immature, as society would define immature, you can be, or I was, late into life, because the immature things are the fun ones. I still don't want to give them up.
It's not a question of why being immature is fun. It's why you get away with it.
People are different. We talked about this the last time you were here.
Whoa.
We could not be more different in that way. I mean, you're so much more a woman's dream, and I'm like a woman's nightmare.
Whoa, how did they get on that subject? Like, what? How is that where we got from this? What are we talking about?
Anyways, never committed, never got married, never wanted to. I never understood how people could. And
I saw a comment before, it was 58 minutes in before Bill mentioned he's not married, but it was actually 51 minutes in. I guess he mentions that a lot. I mean, that's fine,
People who talk about it like married couples, and they talk very fondly about oh, remember when we were in love, and they're reminiscing about this time in their life that lasted maybe 2 years, and they're living off that.
This is really cynical.
rest of their life.
Whoa.
For the rest of their life, they're
He's
kind of
talking to a married man. Does he know Jordan Peterson is married, like, for decades?
remembering, oh yeah, that time when you were crazy in love and you'd have sex all the time and it was hot, and it's like,
Dude, this is so misanthropic.
yeah, and I had that and went, can we just keep this going forever? Would that really be the worst thing?
How did you get to that point? Like, what were they talking about before? I have to go back. I totally forget. Like, what did Jordan Peterson say
So
last?
there's like that old commercial, priceless.
You now than when you were young.
I'm not fucking stupid.
Oh yeah, what's different between you now and
Bill,
when you were
said
young?
this the other week, and I'm mixing dangerous, get more, or even yeah, you do. He needs like a 40-year head start. You talked about this the last time you were here. You know, we were in love, and they're reminiscing
Wow.
about this time in their life that lasted like maybe
So
two.
he goes from saying how he's grown up since he was young to the fact that he feels like married couples are only really in love for 1 or 2 years and reminisce on it in a sad way, and he wishes love could last forever. Yeah, you wish your youth could last forever, maybe. I mean, like, it's just weird. Like, what do you guys, like, go back to talking about Peterson Academy. Like, what are you doing? It's like a confusing thing.
2 years. And they're living off that for the rest of their life.
What?
For the rest of their life,
Chill,
they're kind
bro.
of remembering, oh yeah, that time when you were crazy in love and you'd have sex all the time and it was hot, and it's like, yeah, and I had that and went, can we just keep this going forever? Would that really be the worst thing?
Right?
But you probably have both.
Well, it's something that you can practice.
When Jordan Peterson is speechless, that's when you know you cross the line.
Well, the way I look at it is, and I guess this is biological and theological at the same time, is that we can start with the way that you perceive children. So you don't see your own child the same way you see someone else's
Okay,
child.
so they were
And so then
they
the
were sort of talking about. I'm sorry, I shouldn't. I mean, I guess people are just like, look, they roll with it, but it's just funny that they don't stick. They were talking about like how they've grown up and how they're different, and now he's talking about some example of children.
You don't see your own child the same way you see someone else's child. And so then the question is, well, are you deluded about your own child, or are you deluded about other people's child?
That's not necessarily what the question is. Like, what? Deluded how?
Children. And I would say, and I'm trying to
He's
think
like doing like a magic trick.
about this scientifically, is that you're kind of blind to other people's children. And there's a lot of reasons for that. You see them, in a sense, you see them generically. Like, most people show their best side to children, so I'm not trying to make a blanket condemnation.
You're making a lot of blanket statements of all types.
But I think that when you have your own child, then that's a child that you actually see. And so there's a depth
Like, what? How does this respond to what Bill was saying?
of love there. And it's because your perceptions aren't inhibited. You actually see what's there. And so you fall in love. And then you make this commitment to the child. Now, I think the same thing happens to you when you fall in love with someone, is that you actually see into them much more deeply than you ever see into anyone else. And that's something that you're given. It's like a grace, or you could think about it as the action of an instinct. I don't really care which of those particular pathways of interpretation.
Okay, he's explaining love. I'm sorry, I didn't realize that. He's explaining to Bill what love is.
And you take, but it's something that's offered to you. And I ways of it,
While
you
Bill
can
pours the shot.
practice maintaining that.
Okay.
It's hard. It takes work.
Yeah.
Like, it's an art.
That's always the one that gets me off the trail.
Well, people aren't trained to do this. Like, it's hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so like
Yeah,
one of the things that I do with my wife is I try to remember that I love her. Like, I try to remember that. And I don't mean I bring the idea I love her to mind. That isn't what I mean.
Right.
I try to remember what it was like to see her when I was deeply in love with her, and then to have that happen again. And you can practice
Okay, I mean, I guess this is nice to be charitable.
that. It works. It's hard, but it's like
Okay, I
ridiculously
wouldn't
worthwhile.
appreciate my partner saying it's hard.
And
Right.
I think my wife and I learned that more deeply in the last 3 or 4 years, because I just about died and she just about died. And it was damn close in both situations. And so then,
Wow.
then we didn't die. And it was like, it's very strange, because she thought she was dead and I was sure that I was gone. I thought, there's no way I'm coming back from this.
So when you're going through like some shit where people are attacking you for something, is she like right by you, always like saying like, look at what these
That's
assholes
such
are
a
saying.
good
They're
question.
so
I've never even thought to wonder that. That's such a good
right, and like making you feel, because I know the feeling, as you do,
Yeah.
of like being in the glare because you said something or did something that they hate and they're screaming. And I always think of tennis matches. You ever watch a tennis match?
Yep.
And the player's girlfriend is always in the audience, and they cut to her, and she's just like bleeding along.
Oh my
with him
God, this
on
is
every
so
point.
revealing.
Like it's almost like she's in the match too. Is,
Oh my
is that
God.
Well, I
what
would
you-
say,
when you go
look, I
through?
would say my wife is definitely in the match too, but she's not exactly the bleeding along with you type. Well, seriously, my wife, as far as women go, she's not particularly agreeable. She's fairly combative. And so, I like that about her. I like that about her.
Really?
Yeah.
What? This is such a funny conversation.
I like that about
See,
her
we're
because
so-
she's a rough player, but she's fundamentally on my side. And so how does she stand beside me? It's not so much exactly with empathy. It's more like
I mean, yeah, you have to be like a certain type of person to marry him for sure. I'm sure she's, interesting in her own way.
strategic play, so if an attack comes, and I do this with my kids too, because we're quite tightly unified in that way. It's like we take it on as a war. It's like, okay, you're after us, eh?
Right. I feel like it's stronger with the kids then. And that's why maybe a great reason to have kids is because, even Eric Trump is like, hey, Dad.
Yeah, well,
Exactly. And like Elon Musk is like, hey, my kids like pretty much have to respect me, right? I'll just have like 13 kids because like they sort of have to. Like, I mean, okay, 1 or 2 won't, but like most of them will just like respect me, right? Like just automatic. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah.
well, that is definitely an advantage of having kids. There's no doubt about it. But my wife is like, we're pretty allied. We're pretty now. She's also quite. She's discriminating. Like the reason that I wouldn't characterize her affiliation with me exactly as empathic is because she's quite judgmental. Like she's
To be like, I wouldn't characterize my wife's relationship with me as empath.
me to do things the right way, and if I don't do them, she's not happy about that. But that's actually helpful because in these right ways,
Sorry.
When was the last time you needed to be righted?
oh God, all the time.
Really?
Oh God,
Name
absolutely.
one. Really? You need the woman to sit there and go, hey, you're really off the mark there.
Well, it's you know what it's like. The situations that you're in, let's say politically,
When
they're
was the
complicated.
last time tell me the last time she corrected something in you? And you were like, oh,
This is
thank you
so
for telling me
funny.
that because I was about to be such a fucking asshole. And then you,
Come on, we're on YouTube. dude.
I guess it's probably more subtle than
Wait,
that.
what?
that because I was about to be such a fucking asshole. And then you,
I need to replay that.
I guess it's probably more subtle than that in some ways.
Bill
I
like
mean,
thinks
so, for
he's like
example,
offended him or something.
I guess it's probably more subtle than that in some ways. I
Probably
mean, so
more
for
subtle
example,
than that.
she's watching me in public all the time and the way that I'm interacting with people, and we discuss that to make sure that I'm treating people properly when I'm out in public in general, when people come up to me or when we're in restaurants or anything like that.
like what? If she wasn't there, you'd fucking give them
No, but like if people, I don't know, when you're met by people in public, what's your philosophy of conduct when
What
people
was he
meet you in
doing
public?
with scissors?
No, like if people.
There, you'd fucking give them
No,
a.
but you know, like if people, I don't know, when you're met by people in public, what's your philosophy of conduct when people meet you in public?
Be awesome. Be
so-
awesome, because performers will never stop. Maybe at a certain level you would, but I have never gotten to that level, and that's fine. I love the level I'm on, but I am insecure about, like, I do not want to alienate one single fan. I feel
Yeah?
like, I mean, I still have the
Wow.
insecurity from when I was 22
Well,
years
is that
old.
insecurity or is that a
Well,
moral
yes.
obligation?
No, I think it is. It's both.
Okay,
I want to
okay.
do it because more than anything, to my audience, I always want to be a hero. When I do the show on Friday night, I want to be their hero. When I do a stand-up show, I want to be their hero. And when I meet them in person,
I'm sure it's just a coincidence that they go from how he like doesn't have a life partner to the fact that he wants to be a hero to everyone he meets in his audience.
I've had the experience of meeting someone who I liked from afar,
Yeah.
and then they
something.
disappointed me.
Yeah.
And
You
I want
never
to be. I
forget
want to
that.
be the. You don't.
That's right. You never
And
forget, and then
I
you'll
wanna-
tell everyone
I
too.
want to be the opposite.
Yeah.
I want to be the, wow, he really engaged, not for long. We're not,
Yeah.
we mean, you don't know really like that.
Yeah, right.
But
Yeah.
like, I don't ignore you either, or I don't take for granted
Yes.
that I think a certain way in this world, and I speak a certain way, and I have a certain type of audience, apropos to your point before.
Oh, they're gonna
about
take with the rogue.
what have I lost?
Oh.
Yeah, I have lost some
They should have
audience.
taken with the road.
I have. The super woke left the building, and again, I
Maybe.
don't miss them. People who are indoctrinated into one way of thinking and never really hear anything that gets into that bubble. That's not what I don't find that interesting, or getting to reality.
Okay,
So
I
do
didn't
have
know. I
someone-
mean, that's obvious, but yeah, that's good to know that he acknowledges he lost like his more left-leaning audience.
a different audience. Anyway, so when I meet people who are across the board, I mean, I still meet the old super liberal folks who love it, and now I meet more. But I always met certain conservatives. Always were respectful of my show. They felt like this is a guy
Yeah.
who is a liberal, but he is not afraid to criticize his own side.
No, you're like
just
very
got more-
center, like in the U.S., which is like pretty right wing. I mean,
Exponential.
if you support Zionism and call like anti-genocide protesters like supporting terrorists, like that's so right wing, dude.
Because the left got crazier since about 2015 is when Jonathan Haidt says it began with the
Yeah, that
Gen
seems
Z.
about right.
Interesting, because
That's
it
when-
sort of seems like the right got crazier since 2015. Actually, more in a much more logical and direct and obvious way. That's pretty easy to point out if you compare Harris running in 2024 to Clinton running in 2016, it seems pretty similar. I guess you could say Trump and Trump are very similar too, but that's, supposedly a radical advancement or change in Republican ideology. But so, I'm just saying, like, it's a little bit easier of an argument to be like, oh, actually, things have, the right has
trigger
gotten
warnings
crazier.
and, what happened was we switched generations, and the people.
Well, we had the social media technology and the cell phone come along.
Yes, that was a big part
Yeah,
of it.
yeah, it enabled the psychopaths
Yes.
fundamentally.
Yes, I mean, look, Elon Musk has definitely changed. You can't tell me he hasn't changed. Do I
5
think
months
he's
ago.
evil? I don't, but I do
5
think he's
months ago.
changed, and it's because of what he calls the woke mind virus. He thinks he lost his son.
No one takes responsibility for their actions.
He talked to you about it, as I
Definitely,
recall. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, and that's also something you don't forget.
Well, I can't endorse where he's gone. I can't endorse voting for Trump in any possible way, and he's for Trump. And I think he did a great thing in taking over Twitter because.
And so you think that the moderate left is recoverable?
Yeah.
You think the universities are recoverable?
No.
Why not?
They
Okay,
have-
so how do
we
you
have
draw?
to go in there with the flamethrower. There's a big difference. I mentioned this on my show at the end of it last week.
You
There's
have to go into the universities with a flamethrower. Like, What do you know?
Big difference between Democratic politicians who generally are a sane crop. They're too timid, yes, about calling out their far left, but they are generally a sane crop. They're not for and would not get on the page with legislatively, for example, defunding the police.
They've been pretty useless on the trans butchery side of things.
Like I say, not
Jesus
stand
Christ, dude. You're disgusting, man. Dude, just give me a break. That's so disgusting.
up against that stuff. Exactly. You're right.
8,000. That's
But
8,000 double mastectomies of minors so far.
Oh my
compared to-
God, dude, that is. If that's the number in what location, I don't know. I mean, like, people are only doing it when it's between them and their doctors, and often their parents, usually in almost every case too, or their guardians. Who are you or the government to get involved? What happened to freedom?
The worst Republican politicians, it's not even close. The Republican politicians are way worse. You could say, and I would agree with you if you did, that there are crazies on each side. I would add to that, and in the Republican side, they have found a place for them. Unfortunately, it's in elective politics. But the people, not just the politicians on the far left, they're the ones who are so obnoxious, the ones who control culture, the ones in the media, the ones on what used to be on Twitter. That's what I was saying about Elon. He did a good thing. He drove the woke out of Twitter the way St. Patrick drove the snakes out of Ireland. But then instead of creating what would have been like the internet version of what I think I'm doing, a place where you have a kind of a centrist view, where you have maybe, generally center left, but not afraid to call out the left, but also realistic about how
Bill, you're just like not left wing. It's okay. It's not a big deal. Left wing means anti-capitalist.
dangerous the right is. But he didn't. He went full bore and just switched it all over to the super right. So now we just have Twitter's mirror image.
Let me ask you about
and
that.
And it should have been Twitter, the middle place.
Well, some of this is a technical problem, eh? And what I mean by that is that these new social communication technologies are landscapes that lack governance, and no one knows exactly how to do it, right? It's not like Mark Zuckerberg knows how to regulate Facebook. No, I'm serious. It's really okay. Now, but
totally.
there's some reasons for that too.
You're right.
So the anonymity that the social media platforms allows the psychopathic narcissist types that are all a real danger to civilization. It allows them free reign, and they're amplified because they what would you say? They parasitize negative emotion.
I can
and they're
get
amplified.
another
And now
pawn.
it's the case that throughout history, when the psychopathic minority, which is about 4% of the population, gets the upper hand, that all hell breaks loose. This happens all the time. And what I see happening in this...
Yeah, nothing's ever materialist or based in like what people have or don't have in terms of their survival. It's always like these ideological things. People are psychopathic. That's the cause of problems.
Social media world is the rise of exactly those sorts of people. They'll say anything they can possibly imagine, regardless of political orientation, because they're just using that as a weapon to draw power and resources to themselves. And there's plenty of them. And they have come out in staggering numbers on the far right in the aftermath of October 7th. And it's a seriously ugly thing to see. But it's also, we're trying to solve that.
Okay.
So tell me what you think about this. We tried to solve that with Peterson Academy. So we built a social media network into it. Now, there's a couple of differences between it and Twitter. And the first difference, and I really want to know what you think about this, is there's a price of entry. You have to pay $40 a month. So here's a hypothesis to be part of Peterson Academy and to participate in the social media network.
$40 a month. That's nothing.
I know. We have the most progressive university in the world. High quality education for everyone.
That's so Canadian.
Yeah. So
$40.
Well, so
you can't get a Mai Tai for $40 in this.
Like, does Bill think it's accredited? I wonder.
Down.
Yeah, we think we can get people a bachelor's level at
Like, it would be reasonable for him to, like, I mean, it's stupid to do no research, but, like, it would be reasonable to be like, oh, it must be accredited. He didn't correct me when I called it a college, you know.
equivalent education for $2,000. That's the plan. And I think we can do it. We have the
So
capital
you're
to do
teaching
it now.
like the old school curriculum? Please say yes.
Yes.
Like what I learned.
Yes.
I mean, European history,
Like what
it's
I
not
learned.
evil just because it happened in Europe. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're teaching.
I mean,
it's
like-
going to be a classic
look,
liberal curriculum,
right. And
fundamentally.
like, that's not to
tilted,
say,
I suppose, to some degree
and look,
towards the conservative side.
do I think that
Whoa. I did not realize he just admits that. I thought it was supposed to be non-ideological.
in history, it's not evil just because it happened in Europe? Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're teaching.
I mean,
it's
like-
going to be a classic
look,
liberal curriculum,
Right.
fundamentally.
And like, that's not to
tilted,
say,
I suppose, to some degree
and look,
towards the conservative side.
do I think
Yeah,
that in my
Bill doesn't even catch that. He says to some degree tilted towards the conservative side. Wow.
fabulous Cornell education,
So he just admits it's ideological.
they gave short shrift to Asia and Africa? I do. I think I probably should know more about Asian and African history.
Okay, this sort of decimates your argument.
But
Yeah, but at least you know something.
well, I don't know.
You got to start
I
somewhere.
don't know much, but I'm sorry, but there is less
Chill, dude.
that's relevant to the modern world, because again, the ideas
Well,
that
Eurocentric bigot.
I'm not a
I mean, it's just ridiculous to say something like that just off the cuff.
bigot. I know you're joking, but no, I'm just saying if
That
the
joke I
ideas
don't count because it wasn't really funny and no one laughed.
that came through, as I mentioned before, Athens and Rome and Jerusalem and London and Paris and Philadelphia, if they had come through Dakar and I don't know, Timbuktu, and I would be. I'm sorry, but they didn't. So should I study
Who?
these civilizations more? Yes, but you then have to prove to me that, you know.
Now you've just lost like another 100,000 woke.
It's been a while. But no, you just have to, you should prove any of it. You could just say, you know, but you're just not making the argument at all. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of things we got. I mean, isn't our number system Arabic? I mean, there's just a lot of different things we get from all different places.
Fans, you know, it's like the way they've
They're
gone.
already gone.
Yeah.
They're already
Yeah,
gone,
they're-
brother.
yeah.
They're already gone, and it's
Yeah,
okay.
brother.
Maybe they'll come back, but you know, I mean, it's very hard to reach the
gonna get a
indoctrinated on
fish
either
out
side. I mean, I
somehow.
saw you got in trouble because you said Kamala Harris's fans. She talks to them like,
Like retarded children.
okay. Did you see the debate last night?
I did.
I mean, what could be more retarded than
It was rough.
saying the immigrants are eating the cats and the dogs? I mean, come on, man. I mean, come on. It is kind of asking for trouble when you position the one person, and again, people are binary in their thinking.
I didn't see
but when
they
you-
had that.
but when you use that word about, which I agree.
Okay, so let me ask you a question about that. So I think Trump made a mistake last night
Showing
in
up.
not making more of the nature of his team. So let me walk you through that and tell me what you think about it. So you already
They're gonna put
admitted,
me
for
in
example,
check.
or agreed that the universities are in
Then
dire
that's
shape.
bad.
Horrible.
Okay. So now the question is,
I call it the source of the problem.
Yes, okay.
The mouth of the river from which all the woke nonsense flows.
Yeah.
The academy. Like, they even brought up inequality, but they can't. They have to focus on. I mean, there's even like a right-wing expression that politics is downstream from culture. Like, right-wing ideology is like based in lack of materialism. Yo, I can just take. No? Yeah, I'm just fucking taking. No? Oh, no, I'm sorry. They're double-barreled. there.
Mouth of the river is what I would say.
yes,
Academia.
and I agree with that sentiment. I think it's
Okay.
true. And we
Why?
know
I don't
perfect-
know. Maybe it's, you need delusions of some kind to sustain like a delusion-based ideology, and that's a good delusion.
woke in not.
That's a good delusion. The general way, that's a good way to get delusions, to just get, to coordinate things based on ideas rather than, what actually exists.
I agree with that sentiment. I think
Of the river is what I would say.
yes,
Academia.
yes,
So it's like, oh, academia, they're the problem rather than like the causes of inequality.
I agree with that sentiment. I think it's true. And we know perfectly well that the university faculties are tilted radically to the left, that there's far fewer classic liberals than there were, say, 30 years ago, and there's virtually no conservatives.
Right.
So it's very tilted.
And the phrase ivory tower, sometimes something becomes such a cliche you don't hear it anymore, but that's perfect. It's really what it is. The Ivy League ivory towers. They're living in towers. They don't understand.
Towers of Babel, as it turns out.
Really?
Definitely.
I'm not going to count that as a joke, but it's clever.
Which is kind of the Eve story retold.
I saw the famous Tower of Babel painting. I think it's by Bruegel, the Elder or something, and it was good. It was at the, I believe it was at the Kunsthistorisches Museum in Vienna. It might have been at a different museum though. Went to a lot of museums. But it was cool. People loved it. People were like, oh, the Tower of Babel. I saw one other Tower of Babel painting too, but it's a good subject. It's such a fascinating subject, the Tower of Babel. It's such a great message, like about how much we could achieve if we worked together.
You cannot know what God is like.
Yes.
Don't eat the apple. Yes. Don't try to climb up to me.
That's right. It's a story of pride again.
All those themes recapitulate. I mean, I'm getting this from your book. I mean, I knew it before, but the way you get at that again, it's just. It was,
I have the next one written
such a pleasure.
Oh, wow.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
No, really. I mean, there's so few things left for adults. Everything is geared, and look,
it's that impulsive gratification that we were talking about earlier. A society that's tilted towards that. Well, you talked about immaturity, and that requirement for immediate gratification is like the definition of immaturity.
Sure.
The problem is parents used to go see movies, and now they give kids their money to go see the movies they want to see. That's what happened in the movie industry.
Not sure.
Right.
Not sure about that,
but I mean, I'm not a parent. I probably shouldn't comment on it.
So the Twitter issue. So I think part of the problem, you tell me what you think about this, is that part of the problem with the social media networks is that they're free. Because
it's just that Elon is constantly, just writing true.
Like they make so much money off people's data.
Insanity. It's the thing that happened last night at the debate with the immigrants are eating the cats, and like the human mind. You know this better than me because this is your life's work. But it's just such an amazing place that you can be so brilliant as to be able to figure out electric cars and how to relaunch a rocket from Mars
that rook go?
Back to Earth. But like the stupidest thing.
Does it just go there?
On Twitter, he will retweet and say true.
No, but this
I know
is good.
that the far-right mob that emerged after October 7th, I know for a fact that they're attempting to manipulate Musk and draw him into a web that amplifies their views.
Well, it's working.
I know that. I understand that.
But he
I'm going to be a piece up going into an endgame, so let's get the queens off the board.
And twist it away from the far
I could do something better.
A ridiculous place. My line about Twitter,
there's just a few different ways.
Anything I want to say on Twitter,
actually, let's keep the queens on the board.
That was the problem with Twitter, because the school moms were pointing their finger at you.
Yes, I've noticed that.
And he completely switched it around. But he should have just gone halfway.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. So I have some friends who've been looking into the rise of the far-right anti-Semitic psychopathic types on Twitter and elsewhere. And they've done very deep analysis, tracing the sources of funding as well.
From the left.
The people who are doing this?
From the left.
No, the right-wingers.
The right-wing Jew hater.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah,
Because
the right
there's
wingers.
ones on both sides.
Yeah, but there's more on the right.
Yeah, definitely.
There's more on the right, guys. You know that, right? Come on.
Yeah, that's for sure.
That's
There's
for sure.
plenty of them. And
Yeah, but there's more on one side, right? The right? Like the Nazis were right wing, right, guys? Right?
definite, which is worse. It's like, I don't know.
left.
It's like,
I'm much more afraid of the left Jew haters.
yeah, I think that's right at the moment.
I mean, the right ones were always there.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
they're
know,
more there now
that's
than they were, though,
that's
too.
That's the tiki torch Jews will not replace us crowd.
Yeah.
They were always there. That's a problem. We should keep an eye on it.
Yeah,
It's
they're
bad.
sort
It's
of emboldened, right, guys?
real bad.
Yeah.
Like
But-
way more emboldened than left-wing anti-Semitism. But they literally consider like pro-Palestine protesters as anti-Semites because they apparently don't realize that like 50,000 plus innocent Palestinians have been murdered by the Israeli regime in the last year and a half. And it's continued an ethnic cleansing that's been like 80 years long at the minimum.
What's new?
Yes. Globalize
Is-
the Intifada? That, you mean that
is-
sort of anti-Semitism?
Hamas will save us. Hamas is coming.
Yeah.
I mean, just read their signs. Hamas is coming. Like that's a good thing.
You know that women between the ages of 18 and 35 get almost all of their news from TikTok, eh?
Oh,
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, guys, like, the idea is that, like, someone's got to sort of fight the genocide taking place, you know.
sure.
Yeah. So that TikTok, I think the stats we have is it's 60-1 Hamas versus Israel in terms of messaging.
Well, women between 18 and 35 get most of their news from TikTok, but also from what I tell them. Okay.
What's the demography of
Okay, that was not super funny, but okay.
your fan group? Yeah, right.
It's not that.
No, definitely not.
No, it's. Can you imagine
Okay, so
anyone 18 listening to this
I can't
conversation?
imagine a woman watching your show. No, I can't, Bill.
I mean, they would have to be just, and there's always those 18-year-olds out there. There's always that 1% of kids, no matter how bad the system gets, you can't stop them from being smart. You can't stop them from knowing shit. And
even if you
being-
send them to university, you mean?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah, yeah.
intellectually curious, and especially with the internet and everything else, that what gets on their radar, what sticks, in their head, is just enormous. And it's
Okay.
always impressive to me to meet.
It was good to keep the queens on the board also because their time is running low, so it gives them a lot more to think about.
somebody young like that who knows so many things. But the vast majority of them,
I'm up a piece also.
I could go on and on about the educational system, and I'm sure you could too.
And I have the bishop pointing at the square that my pawn is trying to cross at, so that's pretty good.
But I mean, we've passed.
That's why we're trying to replace it.
Yes. And I'm glad you are. And Barry Weiss, I'm sure you know this, started a university.
Yeah,
And I say the
he
more
sort
the
of
merrier.
copied it.
Yeah,
Because, I mean, obviously we can't just have one,
yeah.
and I think it'll be successful because, success in any market is finding a niche that is not being exploited. Something where the market goes, we need that, or else you have to invent a need. People did that. Nobody thought they needed $5 coffee,
Yeah.
and nobody thought they needed an iPhone. But people have always, I think, thought, I want my kids to actually get a real education. I mean, isn't that the success of Catholic schools in this country? People
I get, like, in what sense?
go to Catholic schools in greater numbers than ever who are not Catholic.
Yeah.
Because it's one of the last places you can get a serious education. Where this
Maybe we should fund public schools better, not based on local tax, property tax income.
Careful. You're starting to sound like someone who's pro-religious
I
again.
am not pro-religious. I'm an atheist, and I have tremendous bitterness against the Catholics who personally made me an unhappy child.
What happened?
Oh my
what
gosh,
happened? I was
we're
raised Catholic.
Really getting somewhere now.
Is what happened. What
were
happened
there
was
specific
church
things?
and catechism and nuns who fucking hit you with a ruler and anxiety about I have to.
Yeah, Jordan Peterson's apparently a fan of that, according to what I've heard about his famous book.
memorize 100 questions like, where do I come from? God made me. Like I still have I saved it, the mimeograph sheet. I can still smell it. Where I had to know 100.
They knew to not take the bishop because I would have put them in check and taken their rook. But I'm going to go ahead and fasten that bishop in place, right? Is there any way to now get the queens off the board? That I would be down with. Oh, wait, do I have to worry about this? Oh, I knew there was something I had to worry about. This rook move is checkmate. Or no, I would have one move. But then they would get a queen, so I need to really, really worry about that. So I could block with the bishop. That would kind of be great, actually. Yeah, let's just do that.
Questions like, where is God? God is everywhere. I mean, some of them you could just guess. But when you're 7, it's traumatizing. Make a 7-year-old memorize 100 questions about the fucking world. And again,
yeah, well, a lot of people who tilt towards atheism aren't doing it only for reasons of rationality. They're also doing it because they were hurt by bad religious actors.
oh, I'm completely open to admitting that.
Yeah,
Fuck them.
Yeah.
And I love to put them out of business, but I also rationally believe it's the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that future historians will say that humans actually exited their medieval period.
I could
when
trade
theism
queens
died.
now.
We think we exited our medieval period with the advent of the scientific revolution and when science became a thing around 1500.
Let's
or
do
whatever, you know, Da Vinci and Copernicus. And okay, I think they will say it's when we stopped as a general thing. There will always be pockets of resistance, but generally stopped being theists. I think they will say that's when humanity entered
Is this
their
checkmate?
post-medieval period.
No, it's force a rook trade, though.
So for me,
I throw the glove down, sir.
Well, the problem I have with that, and have had for a long time, is that
Woo!
there's always going to be something that tries to rise up to occupy the highest possible place.
They resigned.
Always. Because there's a drive towards unity socially and psychologically. And so...
So you're saying
maybe
better
this isn't-
religion than
Let's
what
do
replaced
another.
it?
Well, no, not necessarily.
No,
because
that's not a ridiculous theory.
well-
because I've seen religion replaced by this kind of QAnon
Yeah, we're finally getting to that point from earlier.
thing.
Yeah, that,
QAnon
right?
is kind of a religion.
Yeah, so is wokeism.
So is wokeism.
So is, as I said, belief in the free market or capitalism.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they're both very deleterious.
Yeah,
So is a belief in the profit motive as inherently good.
right.
So, I mean, do I think QAnon, which is quasi-Christian nationalism, is worse than old school Christianity? Yeah, I do. I
Okay,
do.
so why? Why is it
Because
worse?
QAnon is wrapped up with dumb ideas like, you know, if the guy you want to win the presidency doesn't win, ignore it and install your guy anyway.
I got a
because they believe, getting back to the other conversation about Trumpism, they believe that the other side is such an
Or
existential
did they take
threat.
with the
And again,
queen?
the other side gives them so much ammunition to believe this that they think anything is justifiable.
No, they take
In
with
Vietnam,
the
they used
queen.
to say, we had to destroy the village
to save it, yeah. Mhm.
This is like
Okay.
if you destroy democracy to save America, you are destroying the village to save.
See, you asked me earlier why I'm trying to, say, revitalize a corpse. And my answer to that is that
I lost
that's a very
there.
old
That was
idea,
bad.
that idea. And the reason for that is
Which
that
is something religion does.
it does that repeatedly. It does that repeatedly.
Oh,
Lazarus.
fuck.
Right. Well, it's a motif, right? The raising of
How
the
much
dead.
was
and
I
there's
down
reasons
there
for that,
before that
and
blunder?
that's one of them. I'm trying to separate the wheat from the chaff. Like I became
Yeah. I already
convinced
lost.
beyond a shadow of a doubt when I was 20 something, early 20s, 21, that evil existed. And that raises the specter that good exists, at least as the opposite of whatever evil is. And so
Okay.
my religious pursuit, such as it is, and
Like,
this is why
I don't
was
know,
interested
dude.
in
There's other ways to understand that good exists.
psychology as well, and biology for that matter, is because
Try not to laugh.
I wanted to contend with that particular problem. And what I'm trying to do is to separate the wheat from the chaff, because I see that there is a drive towards unity in knowledge, and something will strive to take the highest possible place. And what you see with the postmodernists, for example, the postmodern Marxists, because they tend to be the same bunch, is that they dispense with God, but they substitute power. And like, of all the gods you could worship,
The postmodern Marxists substitute God with power, so they have faith in power. I don't know, man. That doesn't seem like a one-to-one substitution to me.
power might
And
be
obviously, postmodernists and Marxists can be very different.
the worst.
Yeah, power's
Right.
another way of saying what I was saying before. They substitute God for Mao, Stalin,
Yeah, right.
Kim Jong-un.
Exactly.
I mean, there's some truth to the way people treat authority figures being transcendental in some sense, but like, I mean, this is true of all types of authority figures, and also, yeah, I don't know. I guess it's a fair point regarding religion, or it's
It's the same thing.
yeah.
And
where it's what they should be discussing.
Well, and then there's an issue there. So,
Hirohito.
well, so if you had, imagine you had to pick two dictators even, and one believed that he was God himself, and the other believed that despite the fact that he had almost unlimited temporal power, there was something sovereign above him that he was beholden to. Which of the two would you pick? And there's a technical reason I'm
The
actually
one
asking.
that didn't say he was a god. It's not
Yeah,
hard.
because thousands of years ago, this happened in Mesopotamia. The Mesopotamians realized that the sovereign had to be
Just like to talk
subordinate
about history that way, like the Mesopotamians realize.
to some abstract set of principles. He had to be the embodiment of something that was beyond him, or he wasn't valid as a sovereign. And it was a real shift in viewpoint, because you could imagine a situation where it's North Korea. What I say goes. And that means, and I'm saying that deeply, I'm saying whatever I say is right by definition, right? That's a rough situation.
11 holes in one.
Yeah, exactly.
Do
While
not
inventing
question it.
hamburgers. Yeah. And so,
Oh yeah, I
as
can't imagine
civilization
living in a
progressed,
society where the government lies to your face about things.
there was this abstraction of the idea of sovereignty as a principle itself, and that the leader should be subordinate to that. And that seems to be one of the applications of religious thought that's extreme. It's like rule of law, right? It's a similar idea. If you think there's a body of law, but there's a spirit that characterizes that body of law, right? Because it rotates, it's coherent. It rotates around a central axis. Well,
Of course, the spirit of the body of law rotates around a central axis. Of course.
the idea in the West is that if you're the king, if you're the president, you're subordinate to that body of law. You're not sovereignty itself. You're subject to something that's beyond
Believe it
you.
or not, he's not a legal professional or a philosophy professional or a philosopher of law or anything. He's just he's like a retired psychology professor and PhD.
Well, then the question becomes, well, you want that, obviously, because otherwise you're the guy. And then if you want that, it's like, well, what is that principle of ultimate sovereignty? And that's what I was trying to discover when I went through the biblical stories. It's like,
Okay.
what's the principle of ultimate sovereignty that unites these stories? So,
You said before you had a follow-up book.
yeah,
What is it about?
it's about Job and about the
Oh,
Gospels.
some more.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say, if you want to keep on this thread, I mean, as a history major, I would love to see a book about all the same things that you're talking about, but get more into like the influences from the surrounding civilization.
This is when people are like, you should watch Succession or something. It's like, look, I want to, but like, I can't take it. I can't necessarily take the suggestion right now.
It's plainly, in the beginning, it's a lot about Egypt.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, Abraham.
I did this
I'm
in
joking,
the
obviously.
first book I wrote, in Maps of Meaning.
Oh, okay.
I talked a lot about Egypt and Mesopotamia in particular.
Yeah. I mean, like Abraham, He winds up in Egypt, right? Because
Right.
again, not to be always shitting on religion, how bad it is, but they're not really great about women. And among the terrible things they think about
Okay. I mean, that's sort of painting with a broad
women
brush.
is that if you're barren, it's really the worst thing it can be. I mean, a lot of the
I mean,
patriarchs.
it's true that a lot of the, traditional misogynist, views are religion related, but it doesn't really help to talk about it that broadly.
Well, chicks were barren. Abraham is with Sarah. She's barren, so he fucks.
He stays with her, though.
Stays with her, but he fucks the Egyptian maid,
Hagar.
Hagar. Jacob, I mean, he does have Joseph with the wife, but then he gets with Leah because she's the maid.
I didn't see this season of the Bible.
Where was I going with this?
Well, you were talking about what would you say, the lack of respect accorded to women in the patriarchal stories.
Yeah.
Sarah's a pretty good character. Sarah is a pretty good character. She has her own adventure.
Character.
And one of the things you have to say about Genesis, the story of Genesis, that I really think is quite miraculous, is that there's an insistence right from the beginning that both men and women are made in the image of God. And that's a hell of a thing for a document that's 5,000 years old. That's
Why?
a radical thing to say.
She's made
Why? I mean, okay, so.
out of his rib. What are you
Yeah,
talking?
but that makes her an equal. She's taken from his side. She's not taken from his head. She's not taken from his feet. She's taken from his side.
Why does that mean anything? What the side? Why?
Well, it's neither up nor down. It's in the middle.
And we're
And they're both of the same. There's a variety of meanings. They're both
So
of the
great.
same essence. And there's more to it than that too, because
but she's from him.
yeah, but
I mean, she
because-
doesn't exist before
right. But
him.
women are also cultural creatures, right? So
I mean, in ways that men are not? They should have just taken with the queen, no?
one of the common characterizations of culture is patriarchal culture, let's say. And women are creatures of patriarchal culture. They're derived from Adam in that manner. And that's part of the deep structural meaning of that story. Because
What does that mean to be a patriarchal creature?
cultural creature, you're
Meaning?
socialized. You're socialized. You're not merely
Okay, so you're just saying nothing.
a biological entity.
But should you
Right.
be? Should be socialized? I mean, again, not to pile on with the religion, but like the Baptists.
Bill's like, hey, I quarter understood what you said, and it made me think of this.
A number of denominations in this country follow quite seriously the writings in the New Testament. Women should be subservient to the husband, things that are very out of step with, I mean, even Harrison Butker, I don't think is on the page with all
Oh,
of this,
interesting.
but really out of step with where we are today. I mean, a woman should gracefully submit, I
What
think,
about this?
are words in the New Testament. I mean, gracefully submit.
What about this?
That
Well,
is-
let me throw two sticks in the spokes just for the sake of argument. All right, so this will probably get me in trouble, so we might as well do it. So women are hypergamous. So for maximum sexual arousal, they want.
Bill's like, come on, man. Dude, you're really gonna go there? Like, I don't even care. Even I'm not, like, lame enough to care about this shit.
Excuse me, Professor Egghead,
Yeah.
but could you explain that term for us
Okay.
regular New Jersey
Oh, never mind. He just is playing up the term being technical. It means wanting a lot of mates. And the idea that it's scientifically proven that women want a lot of mates and men don't is, like, very bizarre.
Citizens who only went 7 semesters?
Yeah. So the average age gap between men and women worldwide for maximal attraction is 4 years. The men are older.
Yeah, completely blown past the limit here. Okay.
Okay. Women like men of higher status
Oh,
than they
good.
are. Okay, so
What
so
the
and that's
hell,
the
Bill?
thing that predicts male sexual success best is his comparative status. Yeah, it's it's an immense predictor, and it's not the same
He's such a clown.
with regard to women. So what that means, what it appears to mean, is that I'm not making a case for women's female subservience, by the way, but what it does appear to mean
Okay.
that for women to find a man sexually attractive, he has to be of higher status than she is.
Okay, no.
So what does that imply?
No, that didn't follow from everything he just said. Would not be has to be. It's like, sometimes is benefited by it. That was a big jump. Can I push? Maybe? Yeah. They
About their
take,
relationship.
but then I take.
Does that mean that that's a relationship of equality? Like, I don't think it does.
I mean, yes, you are going to get in trouble for this
Yeah.
because people who are guys work for women. The women,
Yeah,
their
yeah.
boss is
Yeah, but
they're married to someone who makes more money than them. Are you saying that that's going to fuck up their
It
sex
does.
life?
It does. The evidence for that's clear.
And that-
Oh my God, you're being a little bit strong about it, though, right? Like, this is not the end of the story.
increases the divorce rate
There
by
is
a law.
there's actual
Oh,
evidence for that.
So
definitely.
what are we
is
supposed
the
to take away from this? That women shouldn't be paid well, or like what? That men should like have other sources of pride, and maybe like there should be a universal basic income, so we just like don't even need to work.
Well, one of the predictors of domestic violence is disproportionate earnings of the wife in comparison to the husband.
You're saying that when
Yeah.
the woman makes more money, the guy loses it and clocks her?
Yeah, that
Oh
is
my
exactly what I'm
God.
saying. Yeah.
And we have
Or
evidence.
maybe she provokes him
I'm gonna
because
lose
she's
material here.
contemptuous.
Oh Lord,
Well, either of those are going to get us in trouble.
it's worse than I thought.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so glad I never got married, and have a good salary. But I mean, this kind of stuff.
And then, well, we could add another
It's-
twist to this, too, with regard to our treatment of women in the West. So, you know that half of women now at the age of 30 have no children. Half. And half of them will never have a child. And 90% of them will regret it. So
Oh
that's
my
involuntary
God,
childlessness.
dude. These probably a bit of a stretch
How do we know
to
they
say
regret
it that definitively.
Because there's enough data now to
There's
show what
enough
happens
data,
as
yeah.
they,
At what age do they regret it?
well, they start to regret it generally around 30 now.
30.
Well, because so by the time you're 30,
Didn't he say
one
women
coup-
over 30 that haven't had a kid and then like wait that
That's involuntary childlessness.
How do we know?
80% of them, and half of them will never have women now at the age of 30, regard to our treatment of women in the West. So, you know that half of women now at the age of 30 have no children.
So
Half.
if the statistic is about women at the age of 30,
And half of them will never have a child.
and then the second statistic is about longitudinally the rest of their life, then why
And 90% of them will regret it.
say, and then the third statistic is 90% will regret it. Why would the regret then be measured at the beginning of the first statistic when they were 30? Wouldn't you like, what are you talking about? That doesn't make sense internally. I'm not checking this. He doesn't cite it. I'm not checking it.
So that's
But it doesn't make
involuntary
sense.
childlessness.
How do we know they regret it?
Because there's enough data now to show that happens as
Like,
they,
at what age do they regret it?
well, they start to regret it generally around 30.
Okay, well, it doesn't track with what he was just saying.
30.
Well, because so by the time you're 30, one couple in three has trouble conceiving. And that's defined as trying for a year with no success. So already at 30,
Well, let's get that couple help. No, I'm kidding.
there's
I mean, nope, that's not a crazy idea, I guess, right?
lots of technologies to help, but they're not that helpful and they're very expensive.
No. I mean, I find it always very amusing that the people who desperately want to have a kid very often can't, and the people who are desperately trying not to.
15-year-olds in the back of a car. Yeah, no kidding.
It's like, yeah. But
Arbitrary fate.
Maybe we
mean-
should teach safe sex to, to kids in school and then give them access to, contraceptives.
I think we're on different sides of the population debate. I mean, I've always been on the page, let's have less people on Earth. And I think you're on the side
I have a
of,
pawn
let's have
more.
more babies.
Oh, no,
I
they have
never
a piece.
understand
They
that
have a
because,
piece.
I mean, the resources of Earth are finite.
I don't think so.
How could they not be?
Because we get better and better at making more from less.
So we're depending on actually figuring that out before there's more.
Yes, that's right. Well,
We
always
have a
it's
lot
always
of
been that
resources. We just should maybe distribute them better.
way with people. That
So
is
you
what
think-
we
Have a
do.
system where, you know, it's not like a huge percent of people struggling. Oh, did I lose a piece? No. It's my...
That's our niche in a way. We're very good at that. We're
Okay.
very good at it, and
So-
we've been spectacularly successful at that
There's
since
8
the
billion people
1960s.
on, 8 billion people on Earth.
We're going to peak at 9, by the way.
What do you think we could support?
Oh, no.
Unlimited? I mean, space-wise, we could have a lot more, of course. There's most of the land is empty.
There's no obvious limits.
This is getting
the limit is
very
energy,
risky.
and there's no obvious limit to
And
energy.
getting rid of waste?
Yeah, I knew they were going to do that.
You can bury waste pretty effectively. We're not going to run out of holes.
Bury waste?
Well, what kind of waste are you talking about?
All kinds. Pollution. What's ruining
People are pretty good at making landfills.
What's ruining the ocean?
I won.
Overfishing mostly.
Overfishing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Mostly it's
that's to
overfishing.
feed people who you say there will be
Yeah,
more
it's,
of.
it's
Maybe
How could
not.
there be
If they
enough
go
fish?
here immediately.
well, we could stop managing the resource too.
Okay.
If
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
not now enough fish, how could there be?
There's no real limit to agricultural production. It's energy is the limit.
but
Gotta
fish.
worry about the checkmate.
Well,
We
we,
just have to-
mismanage. Look, we mismanage the oceanic resources
Or
terribly.
just give up
There's-
on fish.
Well, we probably destroyed 95% of the oceanic resources already.
And
now
you
they
say,
could probably
but you
recover.
say that
but
in such a cavalier way.
no, it's terrible. It's terrible. It's a terrible thing. And like I did a deep
The
dive
world
into.
can't survive without the ocean.
Yeah, it's a terrible thing. It really is. I think the worst thing we've done ecologically is to decimate the fisheries. It's
So he's against ecological destruction. He just copes with it by saying it's all over, which it's not. You could always stop, you know, the harm.
it's stupid too because it was unnecessary.
Right.
It was unnecessary. Like there's some evidence that already by the dawn of the 20th century that 95% of the oceanic resources were gone and that we've depleted another 95% since then. I mean, the accounts of how much fish there was in the ocean before, you know, when the Europeans first came to North America, it's just stunning. Like schools of cod that were hundreds of feet deep and hundreds of miles long, with the average fish being something approximating 3 feet in length. And so thick that you could lower, buckets into the water and lift them up. And sea turtles that were so plentiful around the Caribbean islands that you could hear them dozens of miles away. Like there was so
You
much.
could hear the sea turtles? That's dope. They're going for it.
Plenitude that it's you just can't believe it when you
It's
read
like
it.
like the buffalo.
Well, at Cape Ann in Boston, 300 years ago, when there was a nor'easter, the beach, Crane Beach, 7 miles long, would be covered across its entire length with shellfish 3 feet deep. And now, if you go after a nor'easter, there's like, because I've walked that
Oh,
beach,
shit, they have
you know,
check right
3
there.
starfish and a
You know where there's no cod? Cape Cod.
yeah. There's no cod in Canada either. Yeah.
Yeah.
When I go here, I lose
No,
it.
I mean,
But I don't
Oh, no,
think
lose
there
a-
is a limit on.
Ruh.
There's no obvious limit on human population
It's bad.
sustainability
You know who we
except
need?
energy.
You know who we need is Jesus, because didn't he create like fish out of nothing?
Yeah,
Isn't that one of his miracles?
it is.
I messed up
and
big
that's
time.
reported by St. Paul and his wife, Mrs. Paul, who was into fish. No. But yeah, we need a modern day. Well, you know what I find interesting
Well,
about that
the
is,
meaning of that story in part is that if we treated each other properly, there'd be more than enough to go around.
yeah.
Right?
No, the Jesus story is a beautiful philosophy.
Oh, wow. They
I
just
mean, if you
missed
take
that
the religion
amazing
out of it,
move.
which Thomas Jefferson tried to do, he wrote a Bible and took out all the miracles and the bells and the whistles. But I mean, that was a revolutionary idea. I'm not sure if it's a great idea because of what I was bringing up before about losing the desire to fix things on Earth. But the idea that it gets good
How do I get rid of
in the
this?
afterlife, that was pretty new. I mean, that's not really.
It's also something like, it's a strange thing, Bill, because part of that is an extension of the idea of delay of gratification, which is what would you say? It's a necessary advancement for civilization. It's like defer your
They're gonna
reward.
take,
That's
for
the
sure.
definition of maturity. Well, the limit to reward deferral is an afterlife. And so I think, at least in part psychologically, that the notion of an afterlife, the notion of something like a deferred eternal reward, is the logical consequence of deferred gratification.
Yeah.
So now your criticism is still right. I mean, if you defer everything to the afterlife, and you see this with, say, more pathological forms of Islamic fundamentalism, it's like, well, nothing on earth matters at all because everything accrues to you in the afterlife. Like, obviously, that idea can be pathologized. And I would say there might also even be a rule. Like, it might be, I don't know if this is true, but it might be that the best ideas are the ones that can be used by the most evil people for the worst possible purposes.
Yeah.
Really? The best ideas are the ones that can be used by the most evil people for the worst purposes. I mean, sure, you could find examples of that, like whatever nuclear energy or the theory of relativity being used for the atom bomb, or I'm sure other examples. But, I mean, that seems like a bit of a stretch.
You know, and that's part of that religious hypocrisy problem.
Well, you are not one of those evil people. I hope that whole thing you said about the oceans.
Ontario College of Psychologists would beg to differ.
Well, no, they just thought you were being unprofessional in what you were posting, which I agree. It was unprofessional.
That, whatever you said about the oceans, you know, I hope they show that in left-wing media because, like,
I did a whole series on oceanic mismanagement.
Yeah, but
Well, he didn't say anything, but it's like what would be significant is to say, oh, you know, here's what I would recommend in terms of what should be done. But he just was fatalistic about it and said nothing can be done. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but they don't want to talk. They don't want to talk about that because it just doesn't get clicks. Anyway, I could talk to you all night, but I gotta let you back.
Hey, thanks, Bill. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Such a pleasure.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, so that was fun.
Too. And the blur. Thank you for that.
Does he leave first too? He gets there after, and then he just leaves
and
at
I appreciate
the
the comments on my book too. And the blur. Thank you for that.
Okay, so that was fun, you know what I mean? So thanks for watching, and you know, I hope we all learned something about how, you know, intellectuals are able to live and breathe.